YouTuber I'm Alex is facing one of the worst downfalls in YouTube history, with his channels losing over 160,000 subscribers within just 2 weeks. This comes after his ex-girlfriend, Alice Hez, published extensive evidence of mistreatment, abuse, and harassment she received over the course of their relationship. This has exposed the side of him that he kept hidden from his fanbase, which is ironic considering his entire career is based around creating expose content on other YouTubers and internet personalities. Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we'll be looking into the disturbing downfall of Alex Elmsley, also known as I'm Alex. On the 15th of June 2024, Alice made a post on Twitter stating, "Here's my statement on the situation I've been scared to speak out on. It's best it was made public how horrible this person with a platform is. I would hate to see another woman go through this." This post also included a Google Drive link, which contains a number of audio and video files featuring Alex. Alongside that, it also contained an 80-plus page long document with dozens of statements detailing the abuse Alice endured, alongside the screenshots and pictures to prove these allegations. The document opens up with a trigger warning for sexual assault, suicide, depression, and assault. Following this, the first major accusation against Alex is that he tried to blackmail Alice into staying quiet about the whole situation. In her words, "I've been threatened by Alex to not come out with anything at all and to keep quiet, or he'll create a contradicting story to discredit my own. But I'm not scared anymore." And as we'll see later, this accusation is disturbingly close to the truth. Alice also mentioned how she officially began dating Alex in March of last year, and later revealed that they broke up in December of 2023, so the relationship only lasted about 9 months in total. Now, that's just 9 months, but with the sheer number and severity of the accusations in this document, it almost makes it unbelievable that it all went down in less than a year. That being said, the first issue Alice faced was Alex's constant need for attention. He expected her to be available for Discord calls 24/7, and she states, "Alex felt that because I'm home all day and work from home, that I would be able to call 24/7, and to completely shut out any other social interactions I have with my friends. And when she couldn't join a call because she was busy elsewhere, like with friends or family, Alex would emotionally blackmail her, saying things like, 'Guess everyone has got something better to do,' or 'No one wants me.' Either that, or he would get angry and start dishing out a barrage of insults. 'Idiot, you text like a retard, so call me. You're stupid.' And if Alice tried to apologize and calm things down, he'd stay heated and go as far as telling her to off and calling her a cunt. She further explains, "After screaming at me in calls and disregarding everything I've ever said, he would explain how it's always my fault and that I should apologize, that I should fix it and fight for him after he's made it worse by completely dehumanizing and degrading me. What's extremely disturbing is Alice didn't use the term dehumanizing here as a metaphor."
Now, when it's too fucking late, you admit you did everything fucking wrong. But when it actually matters, when you should lay down like a good fucking dog.
During this time, Alice also found out that not only was Alex keeping touch with several of his exes despite promising he wouldn't, she also discovered that he was even stalking one of his previous girlfriends and still had her explicit images on his phone. However, this was only the start of Alex's twisted behavior towards Alice. In July, the two of them went on a holiday to Italy. However, what should have been an opportunity for the two of them to finally make up got ruined when, according to Alice, Alex started watching a video about, quote, "a girl being hyper after trauma," unquote, which is a terribly disturbing notion on so many different levels. So, when Alice noticed the contents of this video, she opened up to Alex about her own past essay-related trauma. However, instead of consoling her or understanding her struggles, Alex told her that he, quote, "doesn't want to know what has been done to her by other guys," unquote. He also got angry and threatened to leave Alice on her own in a foreign country with no way of getting back home, and even blamed her for ruining the trip after coming back and saying things like, "Bringing up weird shit on our first holiday, you ruined every moment," as well as, "I have no fond memories with you." However, things got even worse for Alice when she asked Alex for advice about getting into Twitch streaming and expanding her online career. Instead of helping her in any meaningful way, Alex just resorted to belittling her for trying. "You're like everyone else, stupid idiots who think they know better than the only man who has done it all successfully," as well as, "It's easy to sit there like everyone else and cry about it when you're a jobless freak. Imagine trying to teach retards like you and my mates how to do this. And yourself. I just told you how to make 6 figures, so f*** off." It would even call Alice a, quote, "dumb multiple times during this argument. And while this is awful, Alex managed to take things even further into the realm of depravity. For some context, many years ago, Alex posted a video in which which he criticized Hannah Mojo's use of a racial slur by saying the N-word out loud himself. He later apologized for this and admitted that it was a dumb thing to do.
I deleted that video because I don't stand by that video, and that video was closer. And there's no excuses for that video that I made.
Most bought this apology as genuine, with comments reading, "As a black person, I think he was genuinely sorry in his apology. You could tell he was ashamed. That doesn't excuse the fact he said it at all. But from the looks of things, it's clear that his use of the N-word wasn't a dumb mistake, but rather a deliberate choice. This is because Alex seems to have no issues about using the N-word as an insult to his girlfriend. If you're already disgusted by Alex's emotional manipulation, gaslighting, and condescension, it gets even worse, because these usual insults quickly escalated into threats of physical violence, with Alex telling Alice to, quote, die in a hole and kill yourself, and even directly threatening her by saying things like, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to break your neck. Alice also managed to record one of these horrible threats he made during a video call.
Acting like this is all just me, and that's something you really need to fix.
I'm gonna bash your head against the wall with a brick if you don't shut the up.
After putting up with these threats and constant abuse for a bit over 9 months, Alice finally decided that enough was enough and broke up with Alex on the 28th of December 2023. She detailed the events leading up to this breakup in the document she shared with everyone on Twitter. According to her statements, on the day of the breakup, Alex asked if he could help with any house chores. She told him to clean the sides of the kitchen cabinets and take out the bins. But instead of doing the tasks he asked for, he started screaming at her for giving him more than one task and telling her that he couldn't handle more than one at a time. And as Alice tried to walk away to avoid any further escalation, Alex crossed a major line. He allegedly became physically violent. According to the document in Alice's Google Drive, Alex kicked her in the back, nearly making her fall to the ground. At this point, Alice was scared out of her mind and was panicking. She was afraid that Alex would hit her again, so she started recording on her phone just in case. All the while, Alex began following her around, insulting her further and trying to incite another argument. During his rambling, he also says that he's the one who pays for everything, so what Alice has to say doesn't matter one bit. After Alice left, he also began threatening to throw her remaining stuff out, including her PC setup worth over £4,000. She quickly returned to take it back, but it was too late. Her setup was on the floor in pieces, the keyboard was broken and scattered everywhere, and both her monitor screens were also smashed to bits. From what we've seen so far, there's plenty of evidence to show just how abusive Alex had been towards Alice since the very beginning of their relationship. Yet something completely surprising happened after the breakup. Put simply, Alex suddenly turned into a new man, or at least that's what he began saying, stating that he, quote, wants to make stuff better, and that he, quote, wants everything to be normal again. By this point, Alice wanted nothing to do with him, so she began ignoring him completely and even blocked his number, which is a clear indicator that she did not want to discuss anything with him. However, Alex kept messaging her on different social platforms, including ones she made for her cat, in hopes of gaining her attention. He even sent her a 24-minute long voice note, crying, admitting fault, and begging Alice to give him another chance.
I'd convinced myself that you were always looking for a way out, when in reality you just wanted me to be normal. You didn't want my money, you didn't want anything from me apart from me to just be what I could be all the time. And I'm so sorry, Alice.
When that didn't work, he tried sending her a gift through Amazon with an apology message reading, I'm deeply sorry for upsetting you and letting you down constantly. I hope one day you can forgive me and we can talk. He even tried the pre-internet technique of sending a handwritten letter to Alice, reading, Dear Alice, I'm so sorry for not fixing my behavior before, and I understand this might be too late or too little. You are the love of my life, and I will never forgive myself for hurting you. During this time, Alice began posting things on Twitter and other social media platforms relating to domestic abuse and toxic relationships. Now, if someone suddenly starts making these kinds of posts, it's natural for people to assume they've experienced something similar. These posts can come across as a subtle cry for help, a way to share their struggles without openly announcing them to everyone. And since many of Alex's subscribers knew about his relationship with Alice, they'd likely start asking questions. To avoid such a situation, Alex tried to talk Alice into keeping their matters hidden, by saying stuff like, "We have a right to a private life," and that, quote, "venting to your friends I understand, but this makes this whole situation harder for both of us," and takes it to an unneeded place. But when Alice refused to cooperate one bit, Alex changed his approach and adopted a more threatening tone, saying things like, "If you keep posting this stuff, it will end up being a huge problem." This is also where he began threatening to make up a counter story that Alice mentioned near the start of this document. Alex, "I don't want to talk about you hitting me, and I found the text about the cat." Alice, "Because I didn't, and you'd be lying." Alex, "When you said you punched me." Alice, "I didn't punch you over a cat. Is this you saying you're gonna use that?" Alex, "No, I'm not. But right now, you're pushing against me." Before Alex could make up any stories about what, quote, actually happened, Alice decided to come forward with her story and all the evidence she'd gathered over the months. Which brings us back to June 15th, when Alice made the Twitter post that started this whole controversy. As soon as the post went live, people started voicing their support for Alice, with a tweet from Wonderstruck reading, "Just finished reading through the drive. Genuinely deplorable behavior. I sincerely do apologize for the volatile behavior that was directed towards you." With another user tweeting, "I am literally shivering after seeing all this. More love and support to you. Please take care of yourself." The YouTube community is completely on Alice's side as well, to the point that there isn't a single person on YouTube who's defending Alex's actions. It's important to note that a big reason why everyone's unanimously taking Alice's side is because the evidence she's published leaves no room for doubt. There are dozens of texts of Alex calling her all kinds of horrible names, and clips of him calling her a dog and threatening to smash her head against a wall with a brick. That's some pretty deplorable stuff. And while everyone else on the internet was bashing Alex's behavior towards his ex-girlfriend, two of his friends also came forwards with statements condemning his actions. Memulus made a post on Instagram stating, "I'm aware of the Alex situation. I would usually wait until both parties have said their side publicly before speaking out, but I think the evidence here is overwhelming. I spent this morning reading what Alice has written and going over the evidence she has provided, and no one should have to go through what she has. It's awful and disturbing and has seriously shocked me. I'm still processing what's happened. This is one of the worst situations I've ever seen in my life, and I hope Alice is okay. It took a lot of courage to speak out about this." Will and E also took a similar stance and completely sided with Alice, but also made a shocking revelation. "Firstly, I really hope Alice is doing well and commend her massively for having the courage to get that out there. As Mia mentioned, there were rumors of his behavior earlier last year. Myself and a few others hadn't had contact with him since or been his friend for even longer. With that being said, the severity of the abuse that Alice published was far worse than anything I'd heard being discussed, and what he put her through is inexcusable. In other words, people close to Alex already knew about his toxic traits, or at least had suspicions, but chose to ignore the matter until Alice came forward with her complete story. Well, not everyone. According to Will and E's ex, Mia Xmon, she and Alex were signed to the same YouTube talent agency up until last year. For those of you who don't know, a YouTube talent agency is a company who helps them find sponsors in their videos. But when she became aware of the abuse back in June of 2023, she forwarded the information to the agency and pressured them into dropping Alex, which they did. And while most see this as a good thing, some are calling Mia's moral compass into question, with a tweet reading, "Isn't she just as bad as everyone else who knew by staying silent? I feel like we can't criticize everyone else and give her praise because she also knew about it and didn't say anything publicly. But as someone else points out, it's the victim's story. What if Alice wasn't ready to share it?" Ultimately, it is a very complex situation with no clear answer, though in light of Alice's bravery, a couple other victims of Alex have also come forward, detailing their horrible experiences with him. The first of these is his ex-girlfriend, Jess Carter, who replied to Alice's tweet talking about how she had to endure similar treatment from Alex. She also posted a screenshot of texts one of her friends received from Alex back in 2019, which includes messages like, "I'm going to kick her head in, might kill her, might actually kill her," when talking about Jess. So from the looks of things, the threats of physical violence towards his romantic partner aren't exactly a new thing, and have been part of Alex's personality for a long time. And just like with Alice, people were quick to come forward to support Jess. At the same time, a YouTuber by the name of King Annie also came forward about her horrible experience with Alex. But instead of receiving support like Alice and Jess, she's getting immense backlash for something she did alongside Alex about 4 years ago. For context, in mid-2019, the YouTuber Slazzo's ex-girlfriend, Shay, published a twit longer accompanied by screenshots in which she accused Slazzo of being controlling, manipulative, and really abusive. A few weeks later, Slazzo made a video titled My Side, where he showed the screenshots, the proof, everything. He proved that he did not abuse her, he didn't force her to do anything, and he was just an immature boyfriend. In other words, the accusations against him were completely off base and inaccurate. Despite this, some people still kept saying that Slazzo was in the wrong, most notably King Annie. In the end, these false allegations completely ruined Slazzo's career and forced him to quit YouTube entirely soon after. So now that the allegations against Alex came out, King Annie came out and blamed the entire Slazzo situation on Alex as well. With a post reading, we started to realize that when there was even the smallest amount of drama and he heard about it, he would make sure to involve himself, even if the subject had absolutely nothing to do with him, and he would just make everything so much worse. For example, the Slazzo situation. Though it was never said in the original statements by Shay, he somehow came to the conclusion that it was and everyone else got the blame for saying his words. However, people are not willing to let King Annie declare herself as a victim in the Slazzo situation. With a post from Wavy Websurf reading, "You helped spread those Slazzo allegations. Don't try to slink out of that. You heard a rumor, did zero vetting, and went with it. Take some accountability for what happened. You co-signed that false story." Some don't even want to acknowledge her as a victim of Alex's toxic tendencies. With a tweet reading, "And now they're trying to take a piece of the victim pie. Alice is the victim, not her." What should have been a straightforward story of a domestic abuse victim coming out to the world has turned into a web of drama which somehow involves multiple YouTubers and incidents from over 4 years ago. This has also made it quite difficult to predict where the situation will go from here. The biggest unknown factor in this regard, however, is Alex's response, or lack thereof. At the time of writing this video, Alex has not yet responded to Alice's allegations in any shape or form. The video of him threatening to smash his girlfriend's head is enough to sink his career on its own, not to mention the remaining videos and dozens of screenshots proving the points Alice has brought up against him. Some speculate he'll make a half-assed apology and try to play the bad mental health card, but given the severity of the situation, that'll only enrage more people. In all honesty, it'd be a miracle if he somehow managed to keep even 10% of his audience, since there's nothing he can say or do that will restore his reputation at this point, which is exactly the sort of situation Illuminati has found herself in as well. Click the video on screen to find out more.
What's beyond your mind? What you looking for? Stay away from the voodoo.
It just seems like there's this never-ending stream of cop shows essentially doing PR for the police. They celebrate when cops trample constitutional rights, overrepresent violent crime and the police's effectiveness, pretend that departments are underfunded, and spread all sorts of lies about fentanyl. Don't even get me started on Blue Bloods. Yes, my great-great-grandfather watches that one in between dialysis treatments. Have you ever considered doing a video about the good things that the police do? What do you mean? It just seems like it's weighing on your mental health a little bit, focusing on the negative all the time, you know? You're kind of a bummer. Yeah, I get that a lot. I mean, the police can't be all bad, right? Sure, I've never said that cops never arrest a murderer or whatever. I just think that once you look at clearance rates and violent crime, it's kind of clear that it's a really small part of their job, and their job's mostly about monitoring problem populations. What about... And I think that the more we focus on outlier examples of good policing, the more we obscure the much larger systemic issues that are central to the very project of policing. Namely, the defense of capital and... Do you see what I'm talking about? You're kind of spiraling right now. Let's try to focus on one of those good stories, for once. Just one time that the police got some unambiguously bad people off the street. What, like To Catch a Predator? You know, one of these days we're gonna have to talk about how you use TV as a buffer to see everything through. Did you know that To Catch a Predator kind of killed a guy once? Wait, what? Yeah, and then they got sued for like $100 million and settled out of court, and it basically canceled the show. Seriously? Yeah, there's no way this video isn't getting demonetized. Patreon.com/skipintro. This video is sponsored by Mubi, the curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at Mubi.com/skipintro. I probably don't need to explain what To Catch a Predator is to most of you. It's one of those shows that's been parodied so thoroughly that even if you were too young to have ever seen an episode, you're still familiar with the idea of Chris Hansen asking you to, please, take a seat.
Why don't you take a seat?
Oh, I don't want to take a seat.
Have a seat.
No, I'm just gonna go.
Take a seat right over there.
Welcome to another edition of Catch a Predator. I'm looking for the Emmys.
Where can I help you?
I'm hosting. Hosting? That's what you call it.
See.
Yeah, it's my second time. So you've done this before?
Despite the show ending more than 15 years ago, highlights and clips still rack up millions of views on YouTube, and Chris Hansen himself is a fairly popular podcast guest even today.
This is Chris Hansen. Have a seat.
Right there. Right over here. Have a seat right over here.
For those of you who don't know or don't remember, the show was built around a number of volunteer decoys from the organization Perverted Justice, posing as children between the ages of 12 and 14, lurking in chat rooms until some creep starts a creepin'. The decoys then get their suspect to incriminate himself, solicit inappropriate activities from them, and to meet in a location where Chris Hansen and the NBC cameras are waiting. Again, I am trying very hard not to get completely demonetized on this video. The show is so ingrained in our public consciousness that this is probably the person you think of when you hear the term sex offender. Or maybe this guy, or this guy, really just anyone who's ever appeared on the show. But while To Catch a Predator puts forth a particular brand of, well, predator, this is not what the majority of cases of CSA look like. And it turns out that that distortion has had real consequences when it comes to actually trying to prevent this abuse from happening. Welcome to Copaganda, a series of videos exploring the portrayal of the police on television and how that portrayal has shaped our understanding of who the police are and what they should be. There's a playlist around here somewhere because there are a lot of cop shows. A lot of cop shows. Today, I want to talk about To Catch a Predator, and for a few reasons. First of all, we're coming off a summer filled with some really high-profile allegations. On this platform alone, there's been a whole slew of them, from Mr. Beast to Cody Co to Dr. Disrespect. I've been assured that these are all real people. Conservatives have leveled grooming allegations at teachers and drag queens a lot in the last couple of years, and hell, the most memorable song lyric of the summer accuses Drake of doing the very thing. The second reason is that I think this crime is pretty universally reviled, something we all want to prevent. It's an extreme crime that's usually one of those gotchas prison abolitionists get hit with. But most importantly, it seems to me that we're talking about this issue all wrong. To Catch a Predator overemphasizes a very specific stereotype of sexual predator that plays into moral panics, promotes bad laws, and can actually get in the way of preventing real instances of abuse. So I'm gonna fix that right now. Once and for all, the hunter becomes the hunted. The meme where it's like predators to catch a predator, and then I am the one catching the catch of the predator. Fuck. After this video, surely this issue will be solved once and for all. Who says all YouTubers have egos? Actually, I prefer the term YouTubist. So today, let's look at the ways in which conversations around CSA have been distorted, what the real facts look like, and how to actually prevent it, if that's the sort of thing you're interested in. Before we get into it, look, I know that this isn't going to be fun to look into. Trust me, I looked into it for this video, and you know what? I can confirm, not fun. My therapist is gonna be so fucking disappointed in me. But I also think that our unwillingness to actually understand and grapple with these crimes leaves us very susceptible to sensationalism that To Catch a Predator puts forth. This is how we get bad laws, with bad consequences. Stuff that doesn't protect children, and may in fact make things worse. Despite everyone knowing To Catch a Predator, I'm still going to give you some background anyway in the name of due diligence, and also because, you know what? You might not know the show quite as well as you think you do. First, let's set the stage. Child abuse entered the national spotlight in America in the 1980s and 90s through a number of high-profile accusations and crimes. In 1981, a 6-year-old boy named Adam Walsh was abducted in a Florida mall and murdered. In 1989, an 11-year-old boy named Jacob Wetterling was kidnapped by a stranger and murdered. In 1994, 7-year-old Megan Conca was murdered by a neighbor who had previously been convicted for some PDF stuff. All of these cases got massive national attention. While the issue had briefly entered public consciousness at other times in American history, like when the Lindbergh baby was abducted in 1932, this was the first time there was truly sustained attention. And it all comes at the height of what is known as the Satanic Panic in the United States, where there were over 12,000 accusations of abuse attributed to the occult. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the Satanic Panic here because this is way too big of a topic to tackle on top of what I'm already going to be discussing today. But the focus of many of the accusations made during this time period were aimed at daycare facilities and preschools, tapping into those fears about threats faced by children. By the 1990s, violent crime was at an all-time high across America, and government tough-on-crime rhetoric reached a boiling point. Check out my video on Law & Order for more detail about this. This combination of publicity, the Satanic Panic, and Law & Order rhetoric rhetoric pushed Congress to pass a series of laws from 1994 to 2006. We'll get into a lot more detail on those laws a little later on in the video. And while all of that attention around predators is front of mind for Americans, in the early 2000s, there are two other massive cultural shifts happening. The first is the emergence of the War on Terror, which definitely did nothing to minimize the fears people had about potential monsters living directly under their noses. The other thing is this thing: the internet. According to Pew Research, the percentage of American internet users ballooned from 14% in the mid-90s to 63% by the time To Catch a Predator launches in 2004. This was an understandably big change for people to wrap their heads around, especially parents. And it's the vibe that To Catch a Predator taps into, evident from the very first episode, which actually isn't titled To Catch a Predator. It's called Dangerous Web.
This is a house on an average street in an average town. It could be your town, but there's something very different about this place. A major crime against a child is possibly being committed here.
While the show was pretty similar to the version we'd become familiar with, you might be surprised to learn that there were no cops for those first two episodes. After talking to Chris Hansen and realizing they'd been duped, these potential perps were allowed to walk away unscathed. Well, the show did plaster their full names and faces on national TV, so probably not completely unscathed. The point is that there was no law enforcement involvement at all. That's because the alleged purpose of the program was to shine a light on a dangerous web, alerting parents to the dark horrors they never realized were happening in their own homes.
Personally, I'm totally shocked that many people responded, which just shows me that it's not something rare. It's not the 1 in a million guy out there. They're all over.
Although the show's advice to parents was basically just to tell your kids not to talk to strangers and maybe buy some software that can kid-proof the internet.
Next, our expert downloads WatchRite software that will allow Michelle to read all of Leomi's instant messages and chat room conversations.
So you can keep an eye on what she's doing, even if she changes her password on you.
If reading all her daughter's online messages seems too intrusive or time-consuming, the detective has another suggestion: filtering software that stops Leomi from sending out personal information, like her home address or phone number.
Because that definitely works. I was in high school around this time, and we definitely never learned how to get around the school's internet filters using proxies. Never happened. I never broke into any rules. Never, ever. From 2004 to 2007, Dateline ran 20 installments of the series, to massive commercial success. The special event nature of the show led to broadcasts routinely attracting over 7 million viewers, and reruns accounted for 19 of MSNBC's 25 most watched hours in the show's final year. So why would NBC cancel such an insanely popular program? Well, probably because they were being sued for over $100 million in a wrongful death suit after the airing of the self-inflicted death of one of their suspects. I'm just gonna keep teasing that story because there's gonna be some dark shit in this video, and I need you to stay engaged. I think the fact that law enforcement wasn't used in those early episodes is indicative of what the investigation was trying to do, ostensibly. Sure, the advice was shitty. Sure, the show was like 85% about scaring viewers with creepy things men said online. But there was, if we're being charitable, some emphasis on education. That first episode closes with a conversation about how to keep kids safe, pointing to the huge disconnect between children and adults on these topics.
Terry Schroeder, founder and CEO of iSafe, a nonprofit foundation that educates children across the country on internet safety, says parents and kids need to work as a team.
I do not encourage any parent after hearing this interview to say, I'm getting that computer out of here, because you will severely handicap your child educationally, socially.
Instead, Schroeder says parents need to educate themselves about online dangers and create open communication where a child feels safe talking about inappropriate situations online.
This might surprise you, but I think that educating people about public health and safety issues is a good thing. I'm pro-education. Look at me, so brave for taking a stand. I feel like Greg from Succession.
Okay, then name me one principle that you have.
I don't know, like, I'm against racism.
In a blog post, Chris Hansen echoed this idea, defining his role as someone bringing truth to light, not necessarily providing justice. Quote, our job is to investigate topics like computer predators, delve as deeply as we can into the topic so that viewers can see firsthand what's happening. But as for punishment, we leave that to the police and prosecutors. As we just laid out, there was a lot of kind of undirected energy around CSA at the time. I mean, the longest and most expensive series of criminal trials in America to this day were the McMartin preschool trials, which kicked off when a mother accused a preschool of abusing children and also being part of a satanic cult. On a totally unrelated note, that mother suffered from acute paranoid schizophrenia. So glad we spent $15 million of 1987 money on that. What I'm saying is that there was definitely room for improvement when it comes to public understanding of this issue. Unfortunately, Chris Hansen's investigations didn't do that well. Instead, just playing into the most common advice given to parents and children alike. Don't talk to strangers. I mean, it's literally the first words of the show after good evening.
Good evening. Don't talk to strangers. It's a basic rule of safety every parent tells their child. But if there's a computer in your home, it's possible that your children have been talking to strangers.
That episode would go on to say this.
1 in 5 children online in this country has been approached by adults looking for sex, according to a study funded by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Before sharing the heartbreaking and terrifying story of Christina Long, a 13-year-old who was murdered by an online predator in 2002.
In May 2002, Chrissy told her aunt she was going to the mall to meet a friend. Instead, she met up with a stranger she'd met online, a 24-year-old married man named Saul Dos Reis. Dos Reis was convicted of first-degree manslaughter.
We are not even 5 minutes into episode 1, and there is already so much to unpack. First of all, the stranger danger approach to protecting children has been widely discredited and debunked by experts. So many experts, in fact, that I'm not even sure that I need to cite someone. But I will anyway, because I'm thorough.
So when we think about child sexual abuse and who engages in child sexual abuse, people tend to visualize that stranger, right? And that sort of framework has been with us for decades. I'm thinking back to the 1980s and the 1990s, when there was a huge concern or increasing concern around sexual abuse. And it was really primarily this stranger danger framework that people focused on. And that's reflected in the laws that were passed and the ways that people talked about sexual abuse.
That's Professor Ryan Shields, a CSA prevention researcher I talked to for this video.
My name is Ryan Shields. I'm an associate professor in the School of Criminology and Justice Studies. And my research is really centered on the intersection of public health and criminal justice, and particularly how can we use the tools of public health to address problems that have traditionally been seen as sort of criminal justice problems. We tend to, I think, in the policy world, focus on the most emotional or the most sensational or the most scary kinds of offenses. And you saw that back in the 90s when there was lots of legislation that came up in response to stranger-related cases of sexual homicide. Sexual homicide that's a horrific crime. That like there's no sort of like confusion around why that would be an emotional thing.
Right.
But it's also exceedingly rare.
Today, RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, reports while roughly 60,000 children are victims of substantiated or indicated SA, just 7% of that abuse is perpetrated by strangers, compared to 59% by acquaintances and 34% by family members, which are far less likely to be reported to law enforcement in the first place. So those non-stranger numbers are probably an undercount. And this makes sense when you think about it. The UK's National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children defined grooming as, quote, when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. That's just a thing that's generally easier to do in real life, especially when adults hold positions of power or community trust. They're more likely to have access to children, to be left alone with kids, and to make kids feel like they might get in trouble if they tell on them. As RAINN explains, quote, grooming behaviors are not only used to gain a victim's trust, but often are used to create a trustworthy image and relationship with their family and community. Abusers are often charming, kind, and helpful. Now, this is not to say that parents need to fear every adult in their child's life. That is no way for a kid to grow up. Instead, as RAINN suggests, parents should, quote, talk to your kids about risks and boundaries, and make sure they know that they can come to you if anyone crosses a line. While the online predation that happens on To Catch a Predator is a thing that happens sometimes, the occurrences are a small slice of a small slice of the problem. One that tends to prey on parents' fears of new technology they don't understand, and the general anxieties of a child growing up.
The combination of their social naivete and our computer naivete is a dangerous combination.
The show loves to fearmonger about the internet, often casting their villains as people who are addicted to this kind of internet behavior.
Many prosecutors around the country, including Riverside County's Michelle Paradise, are not afraid to say out loud that they don't believe most sex predators, especially those addicted to the internet, can ever be reformed.
You'd think that this would get old as people grow more used to the internet, but there's always a new aspect of technology to latch onto. Today, you hear a lot of the same anxieties come up around Instagram and TikTok.
And last week, Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher wrote an op-ed headlined, "Why do young Americans support Hamas?" Look at TikTok.
We can see this pattern of scapegoating a technology for the growing distance between adolescents and parents across history. Psychologist Amy Orban calls this the Sisyphean cycle of technological panics, noting how before freaking out about the internet, there was a moral panic about how video games were making society more violent. Before that, there was the idea that television was rotting our kids' brains. That one might be true, I don't know. There was a congressional hearing on comic books in 1953. Before that, as Orban notes, quote, a New York Times piece considered whether listening to the radio too much would harm children and lead to illnesses because the body needed repose and could not be kept up at the jazz rate forever. I love thinking about kids listening to jazz until their bodies give out, like they're just Charlestoning and then they have heart attacks and die. Also worth noting that at this time, jazz is usually a euphemism for black.
My first lieutenant. Designation Jazz. This looks like a cool place to kick it.
Glad to see we've come a long way on that. Hell, we can even go all the way back to the ancient Greeks, who freaked out when writing came along because kids wouldn't be able to remember shit anymore if they just learned how to read and write. And you know what? They were right. Defund the written language, long live video! I'm just kidding, I wrote this whole thing. Now, none of this is to minimize the gravity of what we're talking about here. But if CSA is something we want to be serious about preventing, there are much bigger pieces of the pie we need to go after. While it's easy to think of offenders as monsters, that kind of characterization actually can make it more difficult to identify abuse. We rarely think of family members as monsters. Adult abusers are usually trusted to some extent. That's how they get access and one-on-one time. But one of the biggest groups of offenders is a group you probably aren't even thinking about.
What that research has shown is that a significant proportion of cases of child sexual abuse are committed by other children, so people under the age of 18. And I'm thinking, of course, of research by David Finkelhor, who found, depending on the survey, anywhere from 50 to 75% of cases of child sexual abuse being perpetrated by other kids. And so the idea of the stranger adult who is sort of, lurking in waiting for to children, that's rare. That's usually not what happens in terms of abuse.
And that's not surprising. Kids are dumb. They're like adults, but stupider. They don't know about things like consent or physical boundaries and just generally what's okay and what isn't. In fact, the same things that make kids susceptible to abuse also make them kind of more likely to offend. One study by Janice Wolak and a number of Clark University researchers found that in roughly half of the cases of online predation they looked at, victims told investigators that they were in love with or had strong feelings for their offenders. Part of growing up is learning about boundaries and complicated feelings like love, so it makes sense that they would be confused. And I don't know about you, but I certainly had no idea what the fuck was going on when I was 14. God, what a fucking nightmare. I wouldn't even go back for the hair.
Kids engage in harmful sexual behaviors for a variety of reasons. A lot of times it's because of lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, lack of sex education, lack of understanding of sexual boundaries, sexual agency, all those things. It's kids who are making mistakes and choosing to engage in harmful behaviors, and these behaviors still can be harmful. But they don't represent sort of like an inner kind of predator, monster in waiting, kind of, again, those words that we often use to describe people engaged in harmful sexual behaviors. It's not really typical of these juvenile cases.
Juvenile offenders might be an even bigger part of the equation when we look just at online solicitation. A meta-analysis of 32 other CSA studies by David Finkelhor found that 44% of internet offenders were under the age of 18, and 68% were acquaintances of their victim. A 2023 survey by the Thorn organization found that only 5% of minors had online sexual interaction, and only 3% had one with someone they thought was 18 or older. A far cry from that 1 in 5 number Dateline pushed. This is all to say that when we talk about protecting kids, the anonymous creepy man on a chat room is far less common than a kid being pressured into sending nudes to a classmate.
But it's very similar. It's usually another kid, and it's usually someone that the child already knows. And in the case of online solicitation or online, asking for images, things like that, usually a peer, intimate partner, something like that. It's the stranger case is the rare case.
But Dangerous Web and later To Catch a Predator were far more focused on the specter of adult chat room stalkers, claiming that 50,000 online predators are active at any moment in the United States.
We enlisted the help of volunteers from Perverted Justice, who make it their mission to expose some of the estimated 50,000 predators nationwide said to be trolling the internet at any given time.
A statistic that then got picked up by Congress.
Testimony to date has revealed the following statistics. 50,000 predators are online at any given time.
When the Columbia Journalism Review dug into that number, Dateline claimed the number had come from a retired FBI agent who consulted on the show. Quote, when the agent was contacted, he wasn't sure where the number had come from, terming it a Goldilocks figure. Not small and not large. He added that it was the same figure used by the media to describe the number of people killed annually by satanic cults in the 1980s, and before that was cited as the number of children abducted by strangers each year in the 1970s. Reminds me of that 30 Rock episode where Matt Damon explains how pilots tell passengers it's only going to be a half hour so they don't freak out.
It's enough time so that people know they're going to have to wait, but it doesn't upset them.
So you're just lying? That's not right. We're paying customers.
Look, Liz, we have reasons for doing the things the way that we do them. We say half an hour to control the herds of walking mozzarella sticks who think that $300 in a photo ID gives them the right to fly through the air like one of the guardian owls of legend.
While Dateline has now disowned that number, if you search for stories about CSA today, you're bound to see a statistic credited to the FBI claiming that there are 500,000 active predators at any point online. I looked really hard for this number anywhere on the FBI's website or in any report that they've published and was unable to find anything even remotely suggesting this 500,000 number. This is pure speculation on my part, but I think someone just tacked on a zero to that Goldilocks number.
And can you tell me when we might be in the air, Captain?
Sure, in about a half an hour.
The final point I want to dispute when it comes to Catch a Predator is just who the show portrays as a potential victim.
11-year-old Laomi Wright admits when it comes to the internet, she doesn't play by the rules.
Rules are meant to be broken.
So you can imagine what her mother, Michelle, a producer here at NBC, is going through. In fact, recently, she found her daughter chatting online with a stranger at 12:30 in the morning.
The name was like Dog Man or something.
Dog Man? Who was this guy?
I don't know.
When the episodes do showcase potential victims and not just decoy personas, it's a wide variety of kids. And the implication is that any kid could fall for a chat room creep. But while 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 20 boys will experience SA before turning 18 according to RAINN, the children who fall for online enticement tend to be much more vulnerable than the typical population. In that study by Janice Wall, the researchers point out that the kids who are most susceptible to online enticement are those who feel they have no adult support structure in real life. That can mean a volatile home life, or acting out abuse they've experienced, or even evolving feelings about sexuality. From that study, quote, hostility and social stigma towards homosexuality, as well as feelings of isolation and loneliness, may impair the ability of boys who identify as gay or questioning to form age-appropriate intimate relationships. Adolescent girls who report a high degree of conflict with their parents, and adolescent boys who report low parental monitoring are more likely than other youths to form close online relationships with people they meet. And this is something that the decoys at To Catch a Predator understand at a fundamental level. In their conversations with suspects, they often play up the idea that they're home alone, neglected by their parents.
He only came here because he felt badly for the teen who was left home alone.
He was so anxious to have some company when he was left by himself for 4 days, but under circumstances it sounded neglectful.
So you're the Good Samaritan.
That first investigation closes with a conversation about how to keep kids safe, pointing to the huge disconnect between children and adults on these topics. And it advocated for active and involved parenting as one of the best possible deterrents.
I guess all the protective software in the world will not substitute for a good relationship between a parent and a child.
No, an active, involved parent is more than any match for any predator that's out there right now.
But this fell by the wayside really quickly. By the third installment, To Catch a Predator was much more like the show we've all come to know. Dateline had received enough pushback from the audience that they looped in the police, usually working with sheriff's offices to arrest their suspects as soon as they left the conversation with Chris Hansen. The runtime ballooned to 2 hours, with just a handful of minutes at the end spent educating parents on how to get in touch with their internet service provider, a thing that I'm sure tons of people did, right after they got a root canal for funsies. The show spent approximately 5 minutes talking about protecting children, including this absolute gem.
There may be 300 kids sitting in that assembly, and we'll say, okay, every 5th one, stand up. Look, there you go. You've seen it. You're the ones that are going to be approached by a predator.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it, promise?
While the series was ostensibly about educating the public about an emerging issue they might not know much about, it's not exactly an accurate portrayal of that issue, nor does it really provide much in the way of prevention advice. And I think you can sense this lack of substance even in the way Chris Hansen talks in front of Congress. Yes, he spoke to Congress about the epidemic of online predators.
That is why a dialogue between parent and child and teacher and student is so critical. It's really the same discussion our parents had with us years ago about strangers at the playground or accepting a ride from someone you don't know.
You can also see it in the way he answers questions about prevention in Reddit AMAs, giving very milquetoast answers without really saying anything about how parents can talk to their kids about these issues. Which is the hard part. Everybody knows you should talk to your kids. The question is, what do you say?
By all means, parents can continue talking to their kids about safety with strangers. Don't get into a stranger's car, having a safety plan. Like, that all makes sense, but it can't be the only conversation, because if so, it's missing out on the kinds of situations that are most likely to occur. And so what parents need to do is have, age-appropriate conversations beginning early, around, starting off when kids are younger, around sort of like, their bodies, the right to keep themselves safe, the right for people not to touch them, and then moving into responsible behaviors with other children, with other people, issues around consent. I think it's not just a single conversation that you have, but it's a continuous conversation that changes based on the needs and the environment of the kid and how old they are and sort of what their context is.
But regardless, these are bad guys, right? There's got to be a more charitable way to do this, right? Maybe To Catch a Predator isn't educational, but maybe there's some other usefulness that we can get out of the show. So, To Catch a Predator doesn't really educate the public, or provide any kind of framework to prevent future abuse. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has no value, right? After all, these programs were watched by millions and millions of Americans. At the very least, potential predators might watch the show and get spooked out, right? Right? Not right.
She pretends not to know about the show to see if a man apparently aware of our investigation would still take the risk and show up. He explains to her it's a show on NBC. They have been doing a lot of shows about internet predators, but that isn't enough to scare him away.
By Chris Hansen's own admission, the show did absolutely nothing to deter potential predators.
Dateline has now done 5 in less than 2 years. You'd think that would be a deterrent. Perhaps for some, but for many other men, the desire to meet a teen for sex is too powerful. We've also seen men who think the odds of being caught are remote. In our last investigation, several visitors realized almost immediately what was going on. It was almost as if they were saying, "Oh, you're that guy, this is that show, and you want me to sit over here?"
On numerous occasions, suspects came to the house and said that they'd actually watched previous installments of the series before chatting up someone that they thought was underage.
Do you ever watch Dateline?
I've watched it once.
Did you ever think you'd actually be on To Catch a Predator? Well, Todd, there's something I gotta tell you.
I'm on it.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC.
All right, so what? These are clearly bad people. People who thought they were talking to a minor and asking them about sex. But if you want to catch predators, are we sure that this is the best way to go about it? I mean, is this even legal?
You know, some of the things they could be doing could be potentially questionable in terms of legality.
That's Masai Lord, a lawyer I spoke to about entrapment.
My name is Masai Lord. I'm the founding partner of Lord Law Group. I specialize in civil rights and criminal defense and employment discrimination. I'm a proud former public defender. Generally speaking, just 2 elements to entrapment. There's the inducement and there's predisposition. And predisposition is the really important one for a lot of defendants, because you have to show that but for the government actor, like if it wasn't for this officer doing these things, that I would not have otherwise committed this crime. It's kind of, you have to demonstrate that your readiness and willingness to participate in the crime absent government interference. Generally speaking, no government, no crime. That's just the best way to think of it.
And it's not hard to see the framework of entrapment here. Not only are decoys posing as minors and trying to get guys to say they'll them, but they also invite them over to a house, one that they definitely would not have gone to without having been told about it. A 2009 paper from the Seton Hall Journal of Sports and Entertainment Law lays it out this way. Quote, "To catch a predator may be compromising the otherwise admissible evidence found in the lewd conversations with minors on the predator's computer by creating entrapment issues during the luring of the predators to the decoy home. Online enticement of a minor, that is, just having a sexually explicit conversation online, is illegal on its own."
Once a predator has made it clear he wants sex with a minor and makes a date for the liaison, the crime has already been committed. He doesn't even have to show up. But will he?
There's no need for the suspects to show up at the house in order to pin this charge on them. Well, except that the show would suck without Chris Hansen confronting sleazebags and telling them how gross he thinks they are.
What are you doing to get help?
Seeing a psychiatrist right now.
Well, it doesn't look like it's working too well based upon all this.
I just started talking to him.
And this gets pretty freaky.
Now, this isn't exactly a surprising critique, and it's one that Dateline anticipated. They said this just 7 minutes into the first episode.
Why is this not entrapment?
Well, it's not entrapment. First of all, we're not a legal entity. Secondly, we're sitting in a chat room. We're not starting anything. They're having a conversation with us of their own free will.
This becomes a much worse answer once the police started working directly with the show, which we'll get to in a little bit. Dateline has also claimed that getting suspects to show up at the house is an indication of intent, something that helps shield against accusations of entrapment, because entrapment is really weird and doesn't make a lot of sense.
They can use the fact that you committed the crime to show that you're predisposed to commit the crime.
That
And
feels
the problem
circular.
is- yeah, it is. But they say, well, you're predisposed because you did it, and in order for you to get the defense of entrapment, you have to admit that you committed the crime. So, so you have to admit that you did it, and then once you admit you did it, the state can say, oh well, he admitted to doing it. That means he's predisposed to do it. So that's difficult. That's difficult.
I'm dizzy. Perverted Justice argues that they never bring up the topic of sex first. But if you actually look at the chat logs, which Perverted Justice used to post on their website and which are still available via the Internet Archive, it's not always so clear. And decoys are quite willing to flirt with that ethical line. I'm sorry, that was an inappropriate one. I'm sorry. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. As Douglas McCollum writes, quote, "It seems clear that a lot of the men snared aren't hardcore predators. Many express doubts about what they're doing, and have to be egged along a bit by the decoys, many of whom come off as anything but innocent children. In some cases, suspects express doubts about age differences only for decoys to reassure them and bring the conversation back to enticement. In others, decoys appear to escalate the conversation by suggesting that the suspect brings condoms when they finally do meet. And just who are these perverted justice people anyways? You know, the ones that the entire show is built off of. That's a weird name for an organization.
Enter a group called Perverted Justice, a kind of online vigilante organization whose mission is to do what it believes law enforcement doesn't always have the resources to do: make a full-time job of going after internet predators. And they do it by posing as kids online.
Well, to borrow a phrase from the Democratic Party, they're fucking weirdos. While the Perverted Justice website is no longer active, I used the Wayback Machine to take a peek, and it was a fucking weird place. Again, they posted all the chat logs, which I appreciated for fact-checking purposes, but it was weird that they had this running commentary that seemed to be filled with a ghoulish kind of glee. I don't know, I don't think you should have fun doing this. If that's not enough for you, they also ranked all of those chat log conversations by disgustingness level. Maybe people are into that, I don't know, but it sounds about as fun as ranking burn victims by who is the least recognizable. They also sold merch that will make you feel like as much of a creep as the people they're allegedly hunting. Ew. Lot of projection going on. The leader of the group was a man named Xavier von Erck, having legally changed his name from Philip Eid because he wanted to nod to his German heritage, which has never been a red flag before. Never. Anyway, von Erck had a bit of a sadistic streak. He was quoted in a Radar Online article saying, quote, "I wish I could fucking kill 9/11 conspiracy theorists. Yes, kill. I'd like to kill them. Kill them all. I want you to die. I wish you would die. Why don't you die? Just die." That article also described him being really mad about people who were executed by Iraqi insurgents because they, quote, "kneeled meekly and struggled, bending to the will of the kidnappers." Really embracing the German heritage, I see. Von Erck also catfished a vocal critic of Perverted Justice over months, pretending to be a woman named Holly, having cybersex with him twice, and convincing him to leave his wife for the fictional Holly before bragging about the entire thing online. Seems like he understands online predators in a really intimate way. Anyway, NBC paid Perverted Justice $100,000 for each episode of To Catch a Predator, and the organization was even deputized in at least one sting by local law enforcement, which could actually make the defense of entrapment more plausible if they were acting on behalf of law enforcement, right?
Yes, the law says that in order for it to be entrapment, you have to be a state actor, but you can be working as a private, organization, a private agency, or even a corporation in conjunction on the behest of the state. And so if that's the case, then you can make the argument that the state is in fact, the government is in fact the person who's behind this and responsible for it.
Aha! Gotcha, Perverted Justice! You've activated your own trap card! Oh wait, Masai wasn't done talking.
If he encourages you or he accidentally gets you to do a crime, that's not sufficient. It has to be his conscious objective that he has to intend for you to commit it. He can't know that you're going to do it. He has to purposely intend for you to commit that crime. And that creates a very high standard for the officer. So with all those things taken into account, you realize that entrapment is pretty much an impossible defense
And yet, despite how impossible it is to make an entrapment defense, To Catch a Predator still found a way to overstep. In Sonoma County, a judge acquitted a sailor caught in one of the show's stings, ruling that he'd been entrapped, saying, quote, "This case is the poster child for the abuse in this program. They took everything away from this kid just to make a TV show."
There's so little case here, I'm throwing it out because it's so clear the guy's been entrapped. The jurors who were interviewed, at least one of them said they felt bad for him, his life had been ruined, and they really thought that this perverted justice that NBC partners with on this had overstepped its bounds. I mean, that speaks volumes.
It does, and that will probably be the reason why he will get some money in the civil lawsuit.
There were 28 other arrests from that sting, all of which might have also been ruled entrapment. But this was the only case where the defendant didn't take a plea deal and went to trial. It's worth noting that the trial didn't even take place until 2011, for an arrest that aired in 2006, which is a long time to fight this kind of accusation in court. Again, check out my videos on Law & Order to learn about the coercive nature of plea deals. Regardless, like we said earlier, these issues with perverted justice shouldn't matter too much in the eyes of the law. They're a private organization, so there's no entrapment here. And yeah, they're disgusting people, but so are the police. Most importantly though, they shouldn't even be needed to make these cases if, as Chris Hansen has claimed many times, the police are conducting an independent, parallel investigation.
It's difficult for law enforcement and prosecutors to come in after the fact and, based upon our broadcast story and based upon perverted justice's chat logs, to prosecute all these men. In Fairfax County, Virginia, they did as best they could. Once law enforcement started having a parallel investigation, then obviously, they're in on it from their standpoint from the beginning, and they're able to make their cases.
There is a separation between the police and our operation. We do what we do. Perverted Justice provides us with the chat logs. We do the interview with these guys. They leave. Perverted Justice has provided the information requested by the police from them. And the police, who are running their parallel investigation, take action after that.
And we just have a few seconds left, but parallel investigation. The cops would have been there anyway? Clearly not.
No, clearly not. The police have, in most cases, contacted Perverted Justice and have said, look, we're interested in doing something like this. We need your expertise. We set up our investigation separate to that of the police.
The problem is that they aren't. They aren't independent, and then they aren't parallel.
You know, one time I was doing a show called To Catch a Predator. We almost caught this pet out, but then he ran from us because he didn't want to be on Dateline. So we tracked him down to his house. And you know what he did? He shot himself. It'd be a shame if you didn't want to go on Dateline. It'd be a shame if we had to track you down and you shot yourself.
To showcase just how interconnected To Catch a Predator was with law enforcement, let's look at the thing I've been teasing this whole time. The time the show kinda killed someone.
Police move in on a surprising suspect, and there are deadly consequences.
This is from the 9th investigation of To Catch a Predator, which aired in 2007 and was based in Murphy, Texas. It's pretty hard to watch because of just how much the show plays into the sensationalism of the death of one of their suspects, basically hyping it as must-see TV.
Instead, officers went to his house, and there, events took a startling and tragic turn.
The man in question was Bill Conrad Jr., a 56-year-old assistant district attorney who lived in a neighboring county. Conrad was caught in the perverted justice sting, and clearly committed the crime of online solicitation of a minor. Just trust me on this one. Conrad did it. I'm not gonna read you any of the things he wrote because they're bad, they're explicit, and again, I'm trying my damnedest not to get demonetized completely. Please, monetization gods, do not demonetize me. And if you like the work I'm doing, consider becoming a patron today. Patreon.com/skipintro. Now, this was a juicy pull for Dateline.
We've had doctors, teachers.
Teach school. I'm in education. I'm a teacher.
Even a rabbi show up during our investigations. But here in Murphy, Texas, just outside of Dallas, this is the first time we've come across an assistant district attorney.
Unfortunately for Chris Hansen and the To Catch a Predator crew, the last day of production rolled around and Conrad still hadn't shown up to the decoys.
Although he was invited by the decoy, the DA never showed up at our undercover house.
as we laid out before, this shouldn't really matter for the case. Conrad had already definitely done the crime of having those conversations online. But no confrontation means that it's not very usable on TV, which is bad for both the police and the show. Dateline is obviously robbed of their spicy story, but the police are also robbed of a national headline where they're the heroes. We looked at how the police use reality TV shows to entrench their power in the last episode of Propaganda on Cops and Live PD. Hey, that's another show that filmed a dying man in Texas. Small world. Anyways, according to an investigative report in Esquire by Luke Dietrich, Police Lieutenant Adana Barber got a call at 12:30 a.m. Sunday morning, the day the Dateline crew was scheduled to leave. Dietrich describes what happened next. Quote, Barber relayed a message to the chief. Chris Hansen wants the police to get an arrest warrant and a search warrant for Bill Conrad. He and the rest of the Dateline crew have decided that since Conrad is no longer responding to IMs or answering his telephone, he is probably not going to come to the decoy house in Murphy. Since he won't come to them, they've decided to go to him. Basically, the producers want the interview and arrest of Bill Conrad to follow the standard To Catch a Predator formula, despite Conrad's evident unwillingness to visit the decoy house. And they want the warrants ready by morning. According to both Hansen and Von Erck, after the fact, this rush was necessary in order to make sure that Conrad didn't delete any evidence. In the episode itself, Hansen even tries to cover his tracks, asking a cop this.
Why was it so important to you to move quickly here? Why not, for instance, wait until Monday morning and let him go into the office and make a controlled arrest at his office?
Simply because when he started the maneuvers to erase evidence or to close out accounts and everything, we didn't want there to be any more destruction.
But this is irrelevant. If there was truly a parallel investigation and the police weren't just relying on perverted justice, there was already more than enough evidence for an online solicitation case. The police chief hurried to get a warrant, and Detective Walter Weiss, the officer who filled out the warrant paperwork, told Dietrich that it had been so rushed and he'd been so tired writing it that the warrant had the wrong city, the wrong county, and the wrong date on it. Despite this completely botched warrant, Murphy PD showed up at Conrad's house with the Dateline camera crew, camped out for hours until Sunday morning turned into afternoon. Here's how Dietrich describes what happened next. But by this afternoon, in front of Bill Conrad's house, whatever wall may have once divided Dateline and the police has essentially collapsed. Chief Myrick and Lieutenant Barber are about 30 feet away, hiding behind trees. Another man, a cameraman, is hiding behind a different tree, much closer to the door, evidently trying hard to stay out of the footage being recorded by the other NBC cameramen, perhaps for aesthetic reasons. Perhaps because it is generally illegal for news cameras to be on private property without permission. Dateline's cast and crew outnumber the 5 cops here by a factor of 2. SWAT raided the house, and Conrad shot himself in the head, dying later at the hospital. Many have questioned this plan. Ed Walton, the district attorney for Kaufman County, which is where Conrad's house was located, called the local police, quote, the most incompetent bunch of buffoons you've ever seen. Another attorney from the county and friend of Conrad called the decision to send in SWAT, quote, the stupidest and most unnecessary thing that I have ever heard of in law enforcement. If they really wanted to do the right thing, they could have waited until Bill came out, or they could have gone to the courthouse where he worked and arrested him. You know, he was not like John Dillinger. That was all for sensationalism. Right, why not wait until Monday morning when Conrad would be at work and thus far less likely to have a gun, posing less threat to both himself and the arresting officers? Hansen himself has even pretended that this is the kind of outcome he would have preferred.
They were doing this as a courtesy as opposed to make a big show out of it and arrest him at the DA's office. Right. I had no control over that. I would have preferred, television-wise, they go into the DA's office the next day, because that's a big
that's big on TV, absolutely.
Whatever. It wasn't my call.
Hey look, it's our good friend Sean Larkin, the former cop who harassed and lied to suspects on Live PD to get them to sign release forms before painting them as irrationally angry black people. What an incestuous web of ghouls we have here. Back to Hansen. I don't buy this explanation even a little bit. First of all, there's no way he actually thinks that would be better TV than a SWAT raid. Come on. Has he seen TV? And second of all, there's no way the district attorney's office would have let them film in their building.
You're not, because they look at the DA's office, they're gonna say you're not coming in. And they're gonna say, oh, we're executing an arrest warrant. I said, okay, the officers can come in, and execute the arrest warrant. They're not good. You're not going to have this.
And that's not the only lie Hansen has told about the events of that day.
Ultimately, when they did the forensic examination of his laptop, they found multiple images of child porn.
The episode itself even implies this, speculating without any evidence or examination that he must have had worse stuff on his laptop.
What does that say about the contents of it?
Unfortunately, I mean, and I am just surmising or guessing here too, that it's going to be something that's going to be way worse than the chats or even than the pictures that he had already sent.
But that's just not true. According to Detective Weiss, who executed the search warrant, and this is quoting from Dietrich's article, quote, "A forensic analysis of the laptop has verified that Bill Conrad was the person who chatted online with Luke, but that the computer hard drive was otherwise devoid of anything illegal or indicative of sexual predation." Soon afterward, Weiss will resign from the Murphy police and consider never returning to law enforcement. He'll make ends meet working at a private security firm. He will meet with a reporter in the reporter's hotel room, recount what he did and what he didn't do, and he will start to cry and then apologize for making a fool of himself. Very cool guy, this Chris Hansen. Not slimy or gross at all. I get it though. If I'd driven a man to death, I'd probably deny it too. It's just not good for the brand. Conrad's sister would go on to sue NBC for $105 million, which NBC settled out of court for an undisclosed amount of money and then canceled To Catch a Predator. Hansen has also continued to downplay this whole thing.
You know, ultimately his sister sued NBC for millions and millions of dollars. The case was settled.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons. A settlement comes out of insurance policy to go to trial, which I'm confident we would have won. It comes out of the news budget. It ties up months and months and months of time. I'm sad for the sister. I truly am.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
To make matters worse, neither Perverted Justice nor the police did their homework for the Murphy investigation by the time it was handed over to prosecutor Doris Berry. From Dietrich, quote, "Not only was there no warrant, but the police had done literally no prior investigation. Instead, they simply camped outside the decoy house and arrested the men who emerged after receiving a prior signal from the Dateline crew inside. The only thing Doris Berry won't quite be able to figure out is whether this means that Dateline had become an agent of the Murphy Police Department or whether the relationship was the other way around. Ultimately, Berry had to drop charges against all 23 men arrested during the Dateline Murphy sting. She didn't have a case. I think the story exemplifies two things. First, the show wasn't separate from law enforcement. It was law enforcement. And second, that televising police action as entertainment leads to bad things, with cops trying to make good TV rather than serving the public. I think you can make a pretty reasonable argument that Bill Conrad would still be alive if he hadn't been caught on a TV show.
Patricia Conrad is his sister.
These people were acting as not only police, but judge, jury, and executioner.
Now, you might be saying, who cares? Fuck him. He's a creep and he got what he deserved. Our laws don't carry a death penalty for this offense. And even if they did, do you really want a TV show to be the one determining that? You want him to die without any trial just so NBC can sell ads?
A murderer was captured this morning and tried today. Guilty. Sentence, death. Execution tonight at 6. All net, all channels. Would you like to know more?
I think it's telling that Chris Hansen has tried to cover his tracks by lying, saying that Conrad had tons of other material on his laptop. He knows that he has to do that in order to make the death seem justified, because he knows that the original offense is not worthy of an execution. If the purpose of the show is just to catch would-be offenders, why does this process need to be broadcast nationally in a way that seems to only impede investigations or give the police cover to not do their jobs? Like, just work with the cops behind the scenes. The way To Catch a Predator and Perverted Justice frame this is that the system is so overwhelmed and that they need to help out law enforcement, and that doing it as a TV show is a way to fund that help.
Law enforcement agencies like the FBI and U.S. Customs have made catching internet predators a high priority, but they say the problem is just too big.
But it's simply not true that there are so many cases that police can't keep up. In 2003, the year before Predator premiered, a national juvenile online victimization study by Janice Wallach found that, quote, more online monsters were arrested for soliciting undercover investigators posing as adolescents than were arrested for soliciting actual youths. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the cops were kind of on it already. Is that right? feels weird to say. It just doesn't sound right. And despite a goal I think many of us are behind in theory, catching offenders before they harm a child, To Catch a Predator was not always welcome in the communities they shot in. As Brad Russ, a former commander of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, told Radar in 2006, quote, "How would you feel if the media rented a house in your neighborhood and drew 30 people who demonstrated a propensity for children to your house? What happens when they flee at a high rate of speed and they T-bone your wife's mom? They never set up a sting in a residential neighborhood." It's not like these are actually secret predators down the street lurking in local neighborhoods the way To Catch a Predator might have you believe.
I was surprised at how many actually came in just that period of time. It was alarming. What is happening down the street? What is happening around the corner? What is happening within our county?
Personally, I'm totally shocked that many people responded, which just shows me that it's not something rare. It's not the 1 in a million guy out there. They're all over.
But despite that scary vibe and rhetoric, the show also admits that many of these men travel, sometimes hours by car, sometimes across state lines, to meet at the decoy house.
Some even cross state lines.
He's coming over here.
This 23-year-old drove from Fort Wayne, Indiana, about 103 miles, more than 2 hours away. He traveled from another state to meet a 14-year-old. 31-year-old Eric Rubalcava comes from Houston, more than 4 hours away.
So, are they just down the street? Or does the show need to pull suspects from several states just to get 30-odd arrests that might get thrown out in court anyways? I don't think that the purpose of To Catch a Predator was to educate people, or to deter would-be offenders, or even really to catch predators. I think the whole thing was really just about trying to punish through shame. There's an almost palpable glee in Hansen when he reveals to his interviewee that they're on TV and the cameras rush in and they hide. I think reporter Brian Montepalli nailed it when writing for CBS News in 2006. Quote, "Public humiliation has been used for that purpose at least since the time prisoners were placed in the stocks and the pillory. One can, of course, argue that potential child molesters should be exposed to the public. Some law enforcement agencies do so. Dateline, however, is not the law. Even if you think it's appropriate for these men to be exposed, is the decision to do so one that should be made by the media? And not just the media, the lamestream media. This is NBC. Come on, guys. Nobody likes the mainstream media. Unfortunately, there's only one way shame and fear go politically. More cops and more jails. And you know what? I'm not sure more cops is really going to be the answer here. They kind of do it a lot, too. So just how good are the police at clearing these crimes anyways? Our best source of data here is going to be the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting, which tracks cases closed by arrest going back to 1995. Now, this isn't a perfect metric, since the FBI doesn't really break down the data into specific offenses, and police departments report their arrest numbers voluntarily. It's also worth noting that people are likely much more comfortable reporting instances of SA today than they were 10, 20, or 30 years ago. But even with all of that in mind, we can see that clearance rates for rape have been steadily declining as far back as we can measure. In 1995, 51.1% of the country's 82,000 cases resulted in an arrest. By 2004, when To Catch a Predator premiered, that number was down to just 41%. The most recent data from 2019 shows that police made an arrest in just 32.6% of the cases reported to them. This isn't because the police don't have the resources either, because their funding has exploded over that same time period. According to a report from Bloomberg, the annual police budget has tripled since 1977 when adjusting for inflation, and nearly doubled since 1995, after the number of violent crimes started dropping precipitously. Even the American Action Forum, a conservative policy think tank, notes that the growth of police budgets has outpaced the growth of the population. Again, after violent crime rates have already fallen and stabilized. According to the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, state and federal governments spent an estimated $5.4 billion in 2021 to incarcerate adults convicted of sex crimes against children. Yet the amount spent on CSA prevention was just $2 million in 2019. As The Hill reports, we spend $3,125 on punishment for every $1 we spend in prevention research. And besides their poor performance, I'm not convinced the police are the best approach to CSA prevention. The Washington Post data analysis found over 1,800 police officers charged with CSA from 2005 through 2022. They also reported that of those cases, 83% were convicted either by a judge, jury, or plea deal, which comes out to 1,469 officers convicted for CSA. Perverted Justice never published their arrest numbers, but they did claim over 600 convictions from 2004 until they shut down in 2019. So, we're talking about 2.5 times as many cops convicted for CSA than Perverted Justice caught during their sting operations over roughly the same time period. Of the cops who were charged, the Washington Post found only 7% were charged with online solicitation, which again, isn't that surprising. As we said earlier, most CSA takes place in real life, not online, and often involves someone with a position of power or trust over the child. And who is more trusted or powerful in our society than the police? I mean, here's a kid's book that my friend gave me, and they got some gems in here like, policemen protect you, keep you safe in many, many ways. That they learn how to protect you. That night and day, policemen work to protect you and keep you safe. This level of trust makes it very hard for other adults to recognize abuse when it happens, as evidenced by a number of stories shared in that Washington Post report. They tell the story of Alexis, a 15-year-old who was groomed by her school's 44-year-old resource officer, who invited her to eat lunch in his office, gave her rides, messaged her late at night, and even befriended her father. While some parents raised concerns about the relationship with both the school board and law enforcement, in an email response to the superintendent, Sheriff Paul Fila stated, quote, "Friendliness with kids sometimes comes across like it's something other than what it is." When Alexis came to her resource officer about her pregnancy, in which he was the father, he told her not to tell anyone because cops don't do good in jail. She lied to her parents, got an abortion, and the abuse wasn't discovered until more complaints rolled in and the Kansas Bureau of Investigation got involved. Or take the case of Timothy Barber, an officer who groomed a 16-year-old Chick-fil-A worker we'll call Ann. He hung around the restaurant and exploited her childhood dream to be a police officer, offering to give her a ride along. From the Post article, quote, "I felt like I had to because he's a cop," Ann told me he could do something to me. Both times, she said, Barber unzipped his pants but kept on his uniform and his gun. I could go on and on because there are too many of these stories. You can find the full Post investigation in my Propaganda reading list, which is in the video description. Again, doing my best not to get demonetized here. I worked really hard in this video, and I'm sure it already has limited ads. If you want to help out, patreon.com/skipintro. Now, this is not to say that Perverted Justice or To Catch a Predator shied away from going after law enforcement. To the show's credit, they do catch a number of cops, which was not something I was expecting when I started this video.
Guess what he does for a living?
You a criminal investigator?
A federal agent working for the Department of Homeland Security. Spikes also tells the girl what he's done for a living.
I used to be a cop. Was a cop for 15 years.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
Just a year now.
Explain to me. With apparently so much going on, we'd take that risk.
But the show is also pretty quick to tell us that this problem is totally handled. The bad apples have been taken out with the garbage.
That puts a bad mark on my job, on everybody. Every cop in this country, you put a bad mark on.
In the case of the Homeland Security agent, within a day of being arrested, he was fired. Justice got punished with it.
But this problem of CSA among the police is a lot more than a few bad apples. Some of this problem has to do with terrible policy. As Lisa Thoreau, founder of Strategies for Youth, an organization focusing on law enforcement treatment of juveniles, told the Post, quote, "Training and protocols explicitly aimed at preventing child sexual misconduct by officers are rare." But personally, I think this lack of training is a really, really weak excuse. Because in so many of these stories, other cops willfully look the other way. Remember Sheriff Fila I just told you about? The guy who dismissed concerns about the resource officer? Yeah, well, he knew better because he had actually employed that guy as a deputy and knew about a previous stalking accusation from a girl in a grocery store. Timothy Barber text messaged multiple teenage girls from his work laptop and in his patrol vehicle, which could be GPS tracked. When this abuse is caught and brought to trial, the judiciary is often incredibly friendly to cops because, you know,
Spike seems well aware that what he's talking about is illegal. When the decoy writes,
"You better not tell anyone."
he responds,
"I won't, sweetie. I can't.
I'd go to prison, and that's like a death sentence. Inmates hate cops. They try to kill them in prison.
According to the Post's reporting, nearly 40% of convicted officers in these cases escaped without any prison time, often receiving a few years of probation instead. In the case of Barber, the judge had this to say concerning his sentencing. Quote, I see a person who, puts a pretty good foot forward, has lots of support from the family. What a great guy he is. And then I have somebody, on the other hand, who is wearing a uniform, who is going to a drive-through restaurant in a police vehicle in uniform, basically hitting on a 16-year-old. So what's the right punishment here? And what did the judge decide? 10 years on the sex offender registry and probation. Oh, and his police department, they didn't even fire him right away. From the Post, Barber, quote, got a call from the city telling him to resign or he'd have to go through an internal affairs investigation. So he resigned on his own. According to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, South Bend has not requested that Barber be stripped of his police certification. When the Post reached out to Barber and asked him if he'd done anything different, he said this.
I wish I could go back and change everything.
In what way?
Well, I wanted to become a police officer.
I also wish you hadn't become a cop, but that doesn't feel like the biggest offense here. Maybe you feel like I'm making too big of a deal out of 1 or 2 officers. But remember that there are roughly 1,500 reported cops who have been convicted of an offense like this in the last 15 years. Here's another. Alex Veach, an officer from New Virginia, Iowa, which in a darkly funny twist of fate shows this on Google Maps when you look it up. The 24-year-old Veach assaulted a 15-year-old girl in the interview room of his police station. It was all caught on tape. The prosecutor offered him 14 days in jail. The judge at his sentencing hearing agreed, and even let him serve his 2-week sentence on a construction job rather than in a cell. And this kind of plea deal situation is even more insidious than you might think it is. Prosecutors told the Post that they sought plea deals, quote, to spare victims from having to testify against their abusers. But that's not the only reason, because, quote, with no trial in Veach's case, few learned the details of how an officer with a troubled history used his badge to prey on a vulnerable teenager. Yeah, that's the really extra fucked up part about this abuse committed by the police. They often get to continue working in law enforcement. According to an AP report in 2015, quote, 6 states, including New York and California, have no decertification authority over officers who commit misconduct. And in states with decertification powers, virtually every police standards agency relies on local departments to investigate and report misconduct, with reporting requirements varying. About 20 states decertify an officer only after a criminal conviction. Take the case of Georgia State Patrol Officer Terry Payne, who was fired in 2008 for having on-duty sex with the daughter of a subordinate. But he was able to land 3 new police jobs in Arkansas and was certified there before his Georgia license ever got stripped. As Philip Stinson, a criminal justice professor at Bowling Green State University, told the Post, quote, this happens to communities all across the country, but it's not on people's radar. And then police chiefs adhere to the bad apples theory, where they say, there's nothing to see here. We got rid of this problem when we fired them. I would argue that this abuse is far worse than online solicitation from strangers. Not only is it apparently more common if we're just comparing the convictions between perverted justice and the Bowling Green database, but, call me crazy, maybe cops should be held to a higher standard. Not only do we trust these officers, well, some of us trust them, but we actively pay them to do this on the job. This is to say nothing of the institutionalized abuse against children that the police either never caught or were complicit in, like the sexual abuse scandal in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston, or boarding schools that have repeatedly abused Native American children for decades. Those victims only got justice through civil courts and journalists reporting the abuse. Police are almost completely absent from these stories. Yet our response to CSA has repeatedly been to double down on punitive measures. Remember those 3 high-profile kids I told you at the beginning of this video? Jacob Wetterling, Megan Kanka, and Adam Walsh? Well, these tragedies pushed Congress to pass legislation that created the sex registry, made it publicly available, and dramatically expanded its scope. The first part of that, the Wetterling Act, passed as part of the infamous 1994 crime bill, thanks Joe Biden, established a registry of sex offenders and crimes against children. This allowed law enforcement to share the location and crimes of sex offenders across jurisdictions.
The Jacob Wetterling Act, that was really around the registry as a law enforcement tool. And so, having systems that sort of categorize and organize as, as a law enforcement tool, that by itself, to me, is less ethically dubious.
But the other parts, not so much. In 1996, that was amended to include what's known as Megan's Law, which required that sex offender registry to be publicly available.
That's what the push for Megan's Law is all about. People in New Jersey want the right to know when a sex offender moves into the neighborhood.
Kind of like a citizen app on steroids.
Community members are looking towards the registry and community notification to feel safe. It's sort of almost as a false sense of security because they think, oh, these are the guys that we need to worry about. If they're not on this list, then I don't need to worry about it. It's like, no, we know that abuse is most likely to happen in families or in peer groups or with someone that you know and love. That's the reality.
A decade later, in 2006, Congress passed the Adam Walsh Act, which separated the registry into 3 tiers, with severe requirements concerning location updates. Tier 3 offenders must update their location every 3 months until they die. The Adam Walsh Act is kinda head-scratching, since Adam Walsh wasn't even killed by an offender who would have appeared on the registry anyways. But you know who would have appeared on the registry? His dad, John Walsh, creator of the TV show America's Most Wanted, an intense lobbyist for this law, and also someone who, by his own admission, had sex with an underage girl when he was in his 20s. The Adam Walsh Act expanded the registry by mind-blowing numbers. For example, according to a 2010 study by Andrew Harris, before the act, about 20% of adults on the registry in Ohio and 5% of juveniles were classified as sexual predators. After the Adam Walsh Act's reclassification, though, 55% of adults and 46% of juveniles were placed into Tier 3. That juvenile number is especially alarming because of just how long you remain on the registry.
I do not believe that we should be putting children on a sex offender registry. I think the research is clear that it doesn't affect first-time offending, it doesn't affect recidivism. We also have research showing that kids who are on the registry are more likely to attempt suicide, and they're more likely to be contacted by adults for sex. The very thing that the registry was maybe supposed to prevent or supposed to stop. Kids who are on the registry are at higher risk of being abused themselves. We also have that fear in the community that sort of once a sex offender, always a sex offender. But when you look at recidivism research, what we find is really like 3% of kids who engage in harmful sexual behaviors go on to recidivate again. 3%.
Take the case of Leah LeBouc, who ended up on the registry for play-acting sex in elementary school with her younger step-siblings, and remained there throughout college, where her classmates could look her up and see only the words criminal sexual conduct. Charla Roberts is another case, who at the age of 10 pantsed a classmate, was prosecuted for indecency with a child, and put on the database for 10 years, as well as, according to a New Yorker article about her, being, quote, barred from leaving her mother's house after 6 in the evening, leaving the country, or living in proximity to minor children, which ruled out most apartments. As writer Sarah Stillman noted in 2016, quote, Roberts can still be found on a commercial database online. Her photo featured below a banner that reads, "Protect your children from sex offenders." And that immediate sense of danger is kind of the point of the registry. Photos are updated every year and stripped of any context to the crime. For some that I looked at from the Washington State Registry, the only crimes listed are failing to update their address. In some extreme cases, offenders have faced life in prison for failing to register a valid address, because they're literally homeless. Don't worry though, the Supreme Court closed that loophole this last term when they said that you can just be arrested for being homeless. You don't even have to have been on the registry. And do you receive treatment in prison? No. In fact, prison has a higher rate of sexual abuse than the rest of the country. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, roughly 80,000 people experience SA in American correctional facilities each year. And since we know that offenders can often be acting out abuse that has happened to them, this seems like a bad idea.
If we're focusing on adults, and those on the registry, difficult time finding housing, difficult time finding jobs, difficult time dealing with sort of like pro-social relationships. Those are the things that keep people sort of in the community, engaged in the community, and offense-free, right? It represents stability. And so the registry and community notification may have a destabilizing effect, right? Because it takes away all these things that could be ways to sort of like build attachments within that community.
Instead of carceral approaches to this crime, we need to be spending these resources on educating children about boundaries and how to protect themselves, how to identify sketchy behavior both online and in real life, and honestly, to question authority.
We can't just focus on giving kids tools to ignore the strangers who are online, but also how do you navigate relationships with peers, with potential romantic partners in an online space? How do you do that? What are the rules for family? What are the rules around communication? As a country, we really haven't put a lot of resources into developing what prevention looks like. Like, theoretically, prevention is the way to go. That if you prevent something from happening in the first place, then that's more cost-effective and meaningful to occur, and then dealing with all of the fallout, all of the negative consequences, dealing with the perpetrator, dealing with the person who experienced the abuse, dealing with the families, giving treatment, all the...
It's already, the genie's out of the bottle, right?
Exactly. So if we invested in prevention, that obviously would have, cost savings, and it's also the more humanitarian approach.
But that could be easier said than done.
Politicians have traditionally hidden behind three things: the flag, the Bible, and children. No child left behind. No child left behind. Oh, really? Well, it wasn't long ago you were talking about giving kids a head start. Head start? Left behind? Someone's losing fucking ground here.
While To Catch a Predator was canceled in 2007, it's hard to feel like it ever really ended. Chris Hansen himself has attempted to relaunch the program numerous times, first as a failed Kickstarter campaign in 2015, then a YouTube channel in 2019, and now as Takedown with Chris Hansen, which he launched on his own streaming service called True Blue in 2022. It just reminds me of Blue Chew, which makes me feel really gross about his streaming service. Hansen regularly appears in media just outside the mainstream, from podcasts across the spectrum to being a guest on the cable network News Nation. On top of that, his work has inspired a generation of vigilante predator catchers across social media, following the same format of using decoys to incriminate a suspect before ambushing them with cameras in YouTube videos or live streams.
No, a grown-ass man, I knew that wasn't real, man. That's a real person. That's not real. Okay, I believe it's a real person. Google's real. Dude, like, Google has real pictures of people, man.
If we want to be charitable again, these are people motivated by a highly emotional crime, and who want to help in the only way they've ever been shown in the media. Hansen himself has largely been dismissive of this trend, arguing that it's not legitimate, it's just for clicks.
Are you concerned about these types of people?
Very concerned. And look, there's a place in our world for citizen journalists. We get tips all the time from people who are content creators who come up with very important topics we should all look at. New York Times ran something about Instagram abuse, exploitation of children just today. But these guys will get themselves or someone else hurt.
It would be so bad if someone were to get hurt. Good thing that never happened to you, right, Chris?
I will never consider my brother's death a suicide.
But we take precautions. I'm comfortable with taking that risk to show people what goes on, to educate people, to create this dialogue and this awareness. That's just for clicks.
Part of this is just a way of legitimizing himself in comparison, since he's done exactly the same thing, building an entire career around the ratings his programs have received. It's a sentiment our creepy German boy Von Erck reiterated to USA Today in 2024, saying, quote, "There seems to be more of a motivation nowadays to expose these guys to enhance an individual's social media stature than there is to build an organization that can work with police and get arrests." You see, he was just in it for the love of the game. Just loved having those conversations in chat rooms. To be clear, this is a thing that they started, although at this point it has clearly spiraled far beyond their control. According to a Washington Post report from September of 2022, there had already been 920 amateur stings on social media that year, with the Post counting over 160 predator catching groups. One they highlighted is a team of predator catchers from Indiana, consisting of two people, Eric Schmutt and Shonda Nolu. Schmutt is very open about how inspired he was by Dateline. The Post describes him this way:
Quote, in his 20s, Schmutt watched every episode of To Catch a Predator hosted by Chris Hansen multiple times. Then, in the early days of the pandemic, he discovered hundreds of YouTube videos from the United States, Britain, and Canada, in which ordinary people were the ones exposing bad guys. Schmutt had already been reading false conspiracy theories online about
It is too far away.
David Schumacher was caught during the To Catch a Predator sting of Fort Myers, Florida. He was 21 years old at the time and believed that he was talking to a 14-year-old female. Over the course of this video, I will review David's chat log with the perverted justice decoy and take a look at the confrontation with Chris Hansen. Keep in mind, the information that is available to us is just a small window into David's life. A window that I will be using to speculate on what may have been going on with him around the time of this incident. The commentary that I provide on this situation is for entertainment purposes, a way for me to share my perspective on a criminal subject that has interested me for some time now. The content of this video is verbally graphic. Viewer discretion is highly advised. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. Straight off the bat, the decoy's age is established at 14, and David lets her know that he's 21. They discuss briefly where each of them live, and around 10 minutes into the conversation, after scoping out whether she is a, quote, good girl, David asks if she's ever been in trouble with the law. After telling him that she hasn't, they both proceed to bond over having two parents, the decoy saying in a rather smug tone, "Wow, we have so much in common." David wants to know if she attends parties, and this really sets off a chain reaction of questions that I'm certain you can all guess where it's heading. You go to parties? You smoke? You didn't like it? Do you get good grades in school? You like older guys? You got a boyfriend? Generally, in circumstances like this, where two people meet for the first time, it is not uncommon for the people to ask each other a lot of questions. This occurs for one of two reasons. Either they are genuinely curious about the other's life, or they are probing for information. If the first instance was the case here, one would expect to see more back and forth, more interest in the answers. David asks if she goes to parties, and she replies with, yeah, she has been to a few. He then instantly moves on to the next question, which is, do you smoke? If he was interested in who she was as a person, one would expect more questions around that initial answer. How many parties have you been to? What did you think of them? What was your favorite party you've ever been to? And so forth. Instead, David is just probing for information. He is asking her if she's been to parties not because he's interested in her personality or experiences. He's more curious about how adventurous, rebellious, and possibly sexually active this young person may be. Asking about parties uncovers that the girl may have had prior sexual experiences, making out at the very least, as this can happen at parties. This thought is further backed up by the next question, do you smoke? He's now scoping out how susceptible to substance intoxication she may be. Again, it's another side-angle question that further gives him an understanding of her sexual personality without having to directly ask about it. Do you get good grades in school? He wants to know if this girl is a studious person, someone who may be more focused on education and less on boys, someone who may be more difficult to take advantage of. We're barely 10 minutes into the chat, and David is full steam into grooming behavior. behavior that really strikes me as well-versed and practiced. The two discuss what each other look like and exchange compliments of appearances. David calls her sexy after she calls him cute, and then he asks if she's had older guys hit on her before. The decoy explains that she has been hit on, but the guy was old and fat. David says don't worry, he's not fat at all, and that prompts the decoy to ask if he works out. You work out? Just work hard. What kind of work? Construction? Wow. David then scopes out the possibility of her staying away from her home for over 24 hours, and the decoy lets him know that it could be possible, but only when her parents are out of town. He then tries to lure her further by suggesting that he could in fact get her home by midnight. Humorously enough, the decoy jokes around and says, "So I don't turn into a pumpkin?" This does get a short chuckle out of David, but something tells me the Cinderella reference went way over his head. All of this joking around has gotten David curious, and he wants her to tell him something. He wants to know if she's still a virgin. The decoy confirms that she is, and this opens the gates to a few more questions. Why are you a virgin? Are you afraid? Are you saving yourself? The decoy maneuvers around these questions rather bluntly, and David soon offers her to come to a block party with him. He sells the party to her by mentioning that there will be bands, and it is a fun time. And then damningly enough, he asks if she knows how to carry herself like a woman, as he will need to tell people at the party that she is 17 and not 14. He also states that he will purchase alcohol for the minor before asking if she'll be his date on the night. As the dialogue progresses, not much of importance is said for a little while. There's a few brief moments of interest amongst the predatory chatter. Things like a discussion of music and their favorite bands are had. He tells her that he could make her wishes come true. He warns her about scary people on the internet and wants to know if the 14-year-old girl likes boys, spelled with a Z of course, who have hard bodies. He asks if she's afraid to get naughty with a guy, and when she bluntly answers no, he responds by saying, good. The questions don't stop either. What color are your eyes, hair? Can you share more pictures with me? David is really getting the run sheet of who this person is. A few more pictures are exchanged between the two, and then once again, David would like to ask another question, this time a sexual question. Have you ever given or got head? Laugh out loud. Too shy to tell me? No, I haven't. Why? Are you afraid? No. Then maybe I'd like to teach you a little something. Laugh out loud. I think I'm gonna go to bed. Tired now. Perverted justice do receive criticism for a number of reasons, and I'm not really going to get into the nitty-gritty of what those criticisms are or what they all mean, purely because we could be here all night talking about it. But I do think that this here is a great example to show the team operating at what I would say is an appropriate way to go about the work they do. Notice how David just shifted the conversation down a sexual path, and when asked if she has performed oral sex, the decoy just responds with laugh out loud. David then waits 30 seconds and asks if she is shy. Very swiftly after this, the decoy then says that she wants to go to bed. Now, it very well could be because it is 1:30 AM and the decoy could be tired, or it could be masterful work on their part. At this point in the dialogue, they really cannot be faulted for entrapment. After the decoy mentions that she would like to sleep, David does attempt to keep the conversation stuttering along a little. They both plan to talk more the next morning, and the decoy asks if he has work. David boasts that he works for himself, as he and his dog are in business together. The conversation then ends for the night, and the two never speak again. If only. The chat fires up the next afternoon around 1 PM, and again, not much of interest is discussed. Although, this in itself is rather interesting, and I will explain why. David is in full swing grooming right now. The behavior that he is exhibiting is actually rather tame by predatory standards. He chooses to test the water here and there with some provocative and carefully placed questions, such as asking who else she chats with, and what kind of guys does she like. Other than that though, for the most part, it's just casual banter. When a predator is grooming a minor, this is what it looks like. He is leveling with her, discussing things like music, asking her about school break and other minor details. This man knows what he's doing, which is surprising based on his outward demeanor when we see him later on. He's casually relating with her and attempting to be someone that she can look to and say, hey, he's pretty cool, he gets me. The fact that he's 21 and not wildly older like some other men would really work in his favor as well, as a young girl may be more inclined to turn towards a man in their early 20s and feel as though they are somewhat mature. More mature than the guys in their school, that's for sure. Hell, when I was in high school, I used to think that a person a grade or two above me was in some sort of superior league of their own. Anyone out of school had practically ascended into some new form of super cool. At 11:45 p.m, the date is now 4:20, and David seems to be celebrating this occasion by telling the decoy that he's been smoking marijuana all day. It is 4:20, baby. At this point of the conversation, I'm unsure if his grooming skills on display earlier were just dumb luck, or if he actually decided that he is done with the pleasantries, as his true intentions are about to parade through this chat as it devolves into a one-sided sex-crazed chat log. Within 10 minutes of them chatting on this night, he asks what panties is she wearing, and if he can get underneath them. It then quickly turns to him wanting to teach the young girl how to have sex, and that he could be her teacher. He asks if she's ever watched pornography, and when she says that she hasn't, he suggests that the two could make some together. Then another round of relentless questioning begins. Are you sexy naked? Have you played with yourself? Can I play with it? Can I see your photos? Wanna see me flex for you? Just what every young teen girl ever wanted, hey? To watch some random dude flex on webcam. The descent into the sexual recesses of his mind is thoroughly upon us, so brace yourself. You gonna let me teach you everything I know? Everything? As much as you can handle. Laugh out loud, sure. So you're gonna let me make you a woman then, right? Laugh out loud, yeah. So, do you think about sex a lot? Sometimes. Don't know about a lot. Have you gotten yourself off when you play with your... No? I'm gonna make you scream when I get a hold of you then, baby. Oh my god. You gonna let me lick your... Sure. Make you on my face. Laugh out loud. So you never got before? Nope. I wanna be your first, baby. Okay. You gonna put my... in your mouth? 'Cause I like that. I'll teach you. I guess I can try it. Just let me drive, baby. I'll show you heaven. Laugh out loud. Look, I'm not a fan of this stuff any more than you are. But to get to the confrontation with Hanson, there's only one way. And that's through this chat log. So let's buckle down and do this, hey? I'll catch you all on the other side. So, do you got a nice ass? Yeah. I'd like to hit it from the back. Laugh out loud. I like it when a girl is on her knees and she reaches back and grabs my... and slides it in her. Can you picture that? Okay, kinda, yeah. Me behind you with your head on the pillow. I want to make love to you though, girl. Make it special for you. Aw, that's sweet. I never took anyone's virginity before. Really? Yeah. Wow. So let me ask you this. You ever thought about where I get off? Like in you or on you? Your mouth maybe? Never really thought about it. Would you let me in your mouth to try it? Does it taste bad? How would I know, girl? I never sucked no before. True. Laugh out loud. But I like to lick. Laugh out loud. Try it and let me know, okay? I must say, this man does have a way with words. All of us fellas could probably learn a thing or two from this hopeless romantic, that's for sure. After all of that, it appears the decoy really doesn't want to engage in this conversation, as after that last sentence, she lets David know that she is slow to reply because she's being distracted by silly online quizzes. I don't think David is able to read anything that doesn't resemble a response to his sexual onslaught though, as he completely ignores the quiz comment and proceeds full steam ahead. Do you want to make love or for your first time? What's the difference? Fucking is just raw passion, and making love is a connection of bodies, I guess. Oh. You guess? So you don't actually know what the difference is, David? What sort of teacher are you? What would happen if a math teacher just stood up in front of their students and said, addition is when you add more to the number, whereas subtraction is when you take some away, I guess. America is in the northern hemisphere, and Australia is in the southern, I guess. The attempt to be poetic is completely diffused by his own recognition that he has no idea what making love is. Sure, he's heard of it, but this person only knows how to jackhammer like a well-fed rabbit. A few lines down, he boasts that he remembers her name, yet he misspells it, which I found to be a bit of a laugh. He calls her Bree instead of B. When I think about it though, I actually can't nitpick at it too much, as the R is right next to the E on the keyboard, so he does get a get out of jail free card on this one. Coming up in the next excerpt that I'll read out, David at this point is so lost within his own sexual desires, he doesn't even realize that the decoy is not paying any attention to him. Could you say, me baby harder? Laugh out loud. I can try, laugh out loud. No try, baby. I'll take care of you. Okay. I love it when a girl talks shit in bed. Laugh out loud. Are you blushing, baby? A little, yeah. Don't be shy, okay? I want you. And that's grown folks' business. Can't be shy. I'll try. So how much you think you can handle in that tight? Dunno. Think you can handle all of me? Dunno. I'll be gentle, baby. Cool. So how big are your B-cup? Do you play with them when you play with your... No? Can I, while I lick on you? I guess. Is that how you usually do it? I do it however you like it. Cool. I want to have your knees shaken when I'm done with you. Oh my god. It just goes on, and it really doesn't seem to have an end to it, hey? Are your nipples big? So you've never seen porn before? Never seen sex? Never seen pictures of it? If I get you too high, you're not going to freak out on me when I start taking your panties off. This question in particular, I find rather disturbing. It would seem that David is fully aware that some people can have an adverse reaction to smoking weed. Some people become paranoid and hyper-aware and may freak out as they think about the situation that they are currently in. So he is aware that a 14-year-old girl who has never had sex before, in an intoxicated state of mind, may freak out when the reality hits her that she is about to be mounted by this grub. I would hate to know what would have happened if this was actually a real scenario. A real girl who was interested in going to a fun party with someone that seemed older and cool. If this girl were to freak out in that moment that he describes, the situation could go real bad real quick, as I highly doubt that our friend David here would be too concerned for how this person feels in that very moment. The sexual questions proceed for quite some time more, as he wants to know if her friends have had sex and told her about it. He wants to know if she'll be naughty for him, and if she has heard of deep throat. When she says that she hasn't, David graciously enlightens her to what it is, with a very informative and scientific description. It's when you put all of my dick in your mouth until it's deep into your throat. Oh my god. Do you got a gag reflex? Yeah. Can you control it? Dunno, never tried. Never seen how far you could put something down your throat? Why would anyone do that? If you can't tell, at this point, I'm just reading through the log to make a mockery of it. It's just so very ridiculous. There's really not much to analyze beyond the sheer surface level cringe. I imagine you already know what I'm about to say here. He doesn't stop there. He talks about pulling her hair, hitting it from the back in sexy underwear, all whilst the decoy is barely responsive. Sometimes, she downright ignores what he's saying by telling him that she's doing online quizzes. And at one point, she even asks if he would like to do one with her. All possibility that she may be a real human being with interests and a personality is completely ignored, as David does not do the quiz. He bluntly pushes it aside and directs the conversation towards, you guessed it, sex. He wants to know how much she likes him. The decoy replies by saying she likes him a lot. I'm glad you like me a lot. I like I a lot too. No modesty there, hey? Are you sure that you're ready to become a woman though? Yeah, I think so. Did you take the quiz to see what kind of ride you are? Laugh out loud? They say that the one that takes your virginity will always be able to get that pussy. Quite the philosophical quote we have there, hey David. I wonder who blessed us with that brilliant illumination of the human condition. Socrates? Aristotle? Or maybe David himself is more modest than I initially suspected, and this quote is direct from Schumacher the Great, a quote that will be passed down through the ages as it touches the hearts and minds of generations to come. One that takes the virginity will always be able to get that pussy. Profound, truly profound stuff. So what happens in 20 years' time when she's married to another person and David rings her up and says, hey, I feel like getting that pussy? Does she have to just look at her husband and say, I'm sorry, honey. He took the virginity, and one can always get that pussy. I know it's always difficult to move on from moments of profound cosmic wisdom like that, but I do have a job to do, so let's keep this train rolling. Short skirts are mentioned, sex in the kitchen is mentioned, thongs and wetness are mentioned. He's sparing no stops. The decoy soon alerts him that she wants to go to bed soon, and taps out for the night. Before she heads off to sleep, David lets her know that after they do it once, she'll be wanting it all the time. So whenever she wants that D, she can call him whenever. We also have another disturbing moment, which is saying a lot amongst what has already been said. He discloses that he likes how young she is. The two depart for the night, and over the next day, logistics of the meetup are discussed. A phone call is had, and the decoy gives David some detailed directions on how to get to her house. He would also like to know if she has any friends that his homeboys could holler at. But if she were to bring her friends, they would also have to pretend that they are 17 or 18, as his homeboys probably wouldn't holler at them if they knew their actual age. When you think about the layers in that one, it's very unsettling. He is willing to lie to his homeboys as he pushes them to unsuspectingly hit on minors, possibly even having the chance of one of them to engage in sexual intercourse with them. And his friends would have no knowledge that they have committed a crime. Sure, I get his friends would have to be pretty oblivious to not know what's going on, but this is how David's mind works. It's highly dysfunctional. And so that pretty much brings us to the end of the chat. He goes out with a bit of a bang, not like some of the others I've seen. He asks the decoy if she will kiss her boy when he arrives, and he also barks an order at her to get something sexy on. Unfortunately for David, I think Hansen didn't get the message in time, as it appears that he forgot to wear his bikini to the confrontation. So let's head on over to the Sting house and take a look at how Hansen is going to handle this one, hey?
Knock, knock.
Hey, come on in.
I got my sister and some babies out in the car too, though. Where you at?
Did you bring some green?
No, we're gonna smoke some though when we get some.
You tried one of my cookies. They're so good.
Did you make them?
Yeah, I made them myself.
All right, I eat one. I like chocolate chip.
Cookies are good munchies.
And you didn't tell me your parents were rich. What do they do for a living? Hey!
It's a very confident entrance, isn't it?
Knock, knock.
With this entrance, we see a revealing little glimpse into the mindset of this man, where so many other predators who have been in this situation are cautious, nervous, and even downright terrified to enter through that front door. David here just breezes right in. He either doesn't believe that he has done anything wrong in this moment, or is very well acquainted with situations where he could get into trouble with the law. Whatever the answer may be, the confidence just oozes from every word he utters.
I got my sister and some babies out in the car too, though. Where you at? No, we're gonna smoke some though when we get some. Did you make them?
Yeah, I made them myself.
All right, I eat one. I like chocolate chip. And you didn't tell me your parents were rich.
Hey, how you doing?
It appears as though he's hanging with a friend whom he's known for many years. Not a miner's house that he's never met, whom he plans to get intoxicated and more.
Hey, why don't you have a seat right over there? Good, how are you? What's happening? Good. Hands up where I can see.
What's going on?
You tell me what's going on.
You a dad or something?
What are you doing here?
I'm David. How you doing?
David, I'm Chris. Nice to see you. How's everything?
Good. Chilling. Birthday party.
So the girl here was going to go with you to the birthday party.
Who are you?
I'll get to that in a minute.
All right.
So what are you doing in this house?
I asked the girl, did she want to go to the birthday party?
Who were you here to pick up? What's your date's name for the party?
B.
B. And how old is B?
I don't know. She didn't really tell me.
I need you to keep your hands up where I can see them.
Don't be scared, dude. I just got a cigarette. Don't be scared, dude. Are you?
I'm not scared.
You seem like law enforcement.
A lot has just happened in a very short amount of time. Let's take it back and pick it apart piece by piece. As Hansen comes out, take a look at the small smile David has on display. In the matter of a few short seconds, David sizes up Hansen and analyzes whether he's an immediate physical threat or not. Likely looking at what Chris is wearing and listening to the welcoming tone of his "what's happening" line, David has evaluated that he can handle this one if he needs to. A challenge has been accepted. He says with his eyes, "If you're going to try and take me down, you better be prepared, fancy man." In his mind, this could be law enforcement, but it also could be a father. And either way, he's ready to talk or possibly even fight his way out of the situation.
Good. Hands up where I can see.
What's going on?
Going off of my previous observation, David is playing along, but does so defiantly. It is now a battle of egos. Who can outplay the other in a bout for dominance? David is fighting an uphill battle and he knows it, but he isn't going to give in so easily. Hansen barks a command telling David to keep his hands where he can see them, and watch David's defiant reaction to this. The hands do come up on the table as requested, but he looks left and right with a confused expression whilst doing so, all whilst that smile creeps from the side of his mouth, the rigid eye contact. He's trying to psych Hansen out by saying, "Who do you think you are? You better be law enforcement, otherwise you're in trouble."
What's going on?
You tell me what's going on.
You a dad or something?
What are you doing here?
I'm David. How you doing?
David, I'm Chris.
He maintains eye contact throughout the handshake and produces an audible inhalation as the physical barrier is now closed between the two men. David is very nervous, and this would be one of the only moments throughout the entire confrontation that he actually shows it. It's a release of tension as the two men greet each other like how men so often do, with a handshake and a stare. I imagine that this is a make or break for him. From an ego perspective, he feels that he has been dominated from the get-go, and now he's trying to regain the control that he is rapidly losing. The handshake serves to try and level the playing field, a greeting to put them on the same page, a page where he can begin to work his way out of this problem.
How you doing?
I'm Chris. Nice to see you. How's everything?
Good. Chilling. Birthday party.
So the girl here was going to go with you to the birthday party.
Who are you?
He has such an expressive face. In the previous episode with Jeff Stacy, we saw a complete lack of personality, and here it's the polar opposite. Initially he agrees with what Hansen has said, then the expression swiftly shifts to stern confusion as he once more would like to know who Chris is. His face is so animated and colourful, it's like reading an entertaining comic book. At the core, he knows that what he wanted to do here is wrong. Yet I imagine that he believes that at this stage no crime has actually been committed. Because of this, right now he's cautiously dancing that line between agreeable and defiant. A physical manifestation of this can clearly be seen here on his face, as he's unsure at this point who Chris is. He knows the situation is not good, but still, he asks for Chris's identity from a place of which he believes is relative innocence.
Who are you?
I'll get to that in a minute.
All right.
So what are you doing in this house?
I asked her, did she want to go to the birthday party?
Who are you here to pick up? What's your date's name for the party?
B.
B.
This may seem small, but watch other predators when asked about the girl's name that they've come to meet.
And who is she?
Oh, what is her online name? Bush Girl.
And who did you come to see, Chris?
What's her name?
Who'd you come here to meet?
Some girl.
Some girl whose name is what? What's your date's name for the party?
B.
B.
David recalls the name instantly, and this won't be the only instance where his memory works reasonably well under pressure, as we will see later on. Some of the predators get really invested in their fantasy to meet with a young teen, and these ones, predators such as Cody Green and David Schumacher here, would be in my opinion some of the more dangerous ones. Just to be clear, I think that all of these men to some degree or another are pretty dangerous, but the ones like David pose the highest threat. They are confident within themselves, and that confidence seeps through into their chat logs, making their online persona more vibrant and possible for a young person to connect with. Throughout the chat, the predator becomes invested in the target's life. Not for wholesome purposes, but invested nonetheless. They know their name and would remember a list of other details that really gives them leverage to slide alongside this young person as a trusted friend. It's well documented grooming. Predators like Jeff Stacy are just a bit ridiculous. I doubt anyone would give them the time of day with the level of charisma that they exhibit online, but a 21-year-old man such as David here could be seen as an attractive option for a young girl to spend some time with. Hey, he seems hip, has the lingo going on. He dresses to what some may consider cool, and is going to a party which he claims to be really fun. The start of his chat, before it crashed and burnt into a million sexual pieces, also resembled one of a finely tuned groomer. This guy is dangerous, and the fact that he can recall her name without dropping a beat is a small sign of the bigger picture that he has had a bullseye marker over her head, or more to the point, over another part of her body.
And how old is B?
Oh, didn't really tell me.
I know I'm making a lot of stops on the way here, so I do implore you to watch the raw unedited clip if you have not already done so. But here again we have another goldmine of observational proportions. Watch as he looks away to lie, and listen to the click sound he makes before the lie begins to indicate to Chris that the question is irrelevant.
And how old is B?
Oh, he didn't really tell me.
The turnaway is to both not have to look Hansen in the eye as he lies, and to subtly show him that the question isn't worth it. Then, as it's over, he quickly catches Hansen's glance again.
I need you to keep your hands up where I can see them.
Don't be scared, dude. I just got a cigarette. Don't be scared, dude.
Now that's quite something. David is on another level with his confrontational confidence, as he exhibits such a blatant and bold form of intimidation under the circumstances that he finds himself in. He says to Hansen, "Don't be scared, dude. Don't be scared." as he slowly stands and maintains eye contact. The head slides back and forth as he keeps his hands in the pocket, defying the requested command. And his hand stays in his pocket until he is ready to take it out, and not a moment before. Once again, he's trying to psych his opponent out. He's saying, hey, relax there, big boy. We both know you're in charge here, so don't worry about me. But I could shred you to pieces if I wanted, and we both know that. But don't be scared, because I'm not going to do that. Having felt the challenge for dominance here, Chris does not want to be put on the back foot, and he states that he is not scared whilst maintaining his own eye contact. It's easy for me as a viewer to sit back and watch this play out from the safety of my home. It's easy for me to laugh at the ridiculous nature of this confrontation overall. And it's easy for me to overlook the subtle power plays going on between these two. Yet when I stop and take a moment to put myself in Chris's shoes, someone like David would be a rather challenging interview. It's Chris's job to keep this man in the room, keep him talking, squeeze information out of him that's both revealing and entertaining. Before I go down this tangent, I want to preface it by saying that I'm not going to go into the argument of whether this program is wholesome or not. That's a topic that could take up hours and hours worth of discussion in itself. The facts that I'm exclusively working with here are this program was made, this program needed to make ratings, and Hansen had a job to do. I think a lot of people see me making these videos and believe that my motivation to do so is that I have an unbiased love for the show or Hansen himself. Like these videos are some sort of shrine to my unfaltering love of the TCAT program and my lord Hansen himself. It's actually a bit of a chuckle when I think about it like that. Maybe one day if I show you the room that I record in, I'll put up a bunch of Hansen posters and candles burning around a life-size statue of him for a laugh, hey? But in all seriousness, I'd like to make it known that my personal opinion on this program would take a long time to pull apart. So let's leave that one for another day and look at purely what is going on here in this moment. A moment that occurred, and a moment that was documented. If it were me in Chris's shoes, I would stand in front of David, and I'd probably be fairly nervous. This guy has an extensive criminal history with only a few months before being charged with battery. Sure, there are security and police around, but that doesn't mean David couldn't get a solid punch, stab, or hit in before the security got involved. Physical safety would be on the front of my mind, and who knows whether Chris is thinking about that right now. If he is, he sure isn't showing it. I can only speculate on whether Hansen is or isn't scared in this moment. Yet it's a fascinating little power struggle to watch play out, especially this frame right here. That look is one of challenge, acknowledgement, and intimidation. Watch when I unpause it, as I believe Chris wins the showdown of dominance. David breaks the intensity of the moment by raising the pitch of his voice and becoming conversational as his eyes nervously dart back and forth. All signs that he is subconsciously attempting to look submissive and less threatening. While David backs off from this challenge, Hansen proceeds to stare him down to ensure that he won that round.
You seem like law enforcement. I happen to know law enforcement.
You do law enforcement, yeah.
I happen to know law enforcement when I see them.
You do. So you're an expert in this area.
No, I'm just saying you come off as law enforcement.
Really?
So
you know how you come off?
How's that?
Somebody who's very nervous. Somebody who came over here to have sex with a 14-year-old girl.
14-year-old?
How old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Do you see an issue with a 21-year-old coming over to visit a 14-year-old?
I didn't really know she was 14.
She told you.
We were in a role-playing chat room.
Have you ever given or got head? Do you need a teacher? Are you sexy naked? Have you ever played with yourself? You gonna put my in your mouth?
Yeah, I like.
Because I like that, I'll teach you.
And you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say it makes it look like you came here.
I didn't come here. I came
to
pick her
have
up.
sex with an underage girl.
We were in a role-playing chat room, dude.
And what role were you playing exactly here?
People play roles, and anytime, never asked role-playing. People just talk.
Watch porno.
And?
You got pornos.
I'm an adult.
Yes, but the girl you were talking to was not.
Well, I didn't know that, dude.
And your poor sister's waiting outside with 2 babies in the car?
Yeah. So
because you had to come over here and have sex with a 14-year-old?
I didn't come over here to have sex.
Why would you put that sister of yours?
I didn't come over here to have sex. I come over here to get the girl and go to the party. My God, dude. Is this some kind of hold
Time
up, man?
is
You got a
money,
warrant? Because, I mean, if the girl don't want to come and if you got a problem.
Warrant? What are you, a defense lawyer now?
I'm saying, man. You don't got no cause to hold me. I got no problem sitting here to talk to you.
Once again, let's take it back, because a lot has happened in a short amount of time.
You seem like law enforcement. I happen to know law enforcement.
You
when
do
I
law
see one.
enforcement, yeah.
I happen to know law enforcement when I see them.
You do. So you're an expert in this area.
No, I'm just saying you.
This is where it all starts to fall over for David. After that last challenge we just watched Hansen dominate, from this point on, David never regains his confidence. He stumbles as he talks, and moments like this, where he's trying to grip some form of conversational power by saying, "You seem like law enforcement," happen frequently. This one in particular would be an attempt to gain a slither of power, to display his knowledge and experience in a way that makes him feel more comfortable with his position. Whilst he is teetering for balance with that comment, Chris knocks him down again with his quick wit. He calls him out and says, "So you're an expert in this field?" Hansen has found his pressure point, and boy is he applying pressure.
You come off as law enforcement.
Really?
So
You know how you come off?
how's that?
Somebody who's very nervous. Somebody who came over here to have sex with a 14-year-old girl.
14-year-old?
The allegation that the girl is 14 hits pretty hard. Although his animated acknowledgement of the age seems pretty insincere, it is a revelation that proves to him he may be in hotter water than he initially thought. David at this point shifts into self-preservation mode. His movements will become less animated, the pitch of his voice will shift to a lower register, and his expressions no longer resemble a naughty child, but rather that of a dismissive and serious adult.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Do you see an issue with a 21-year-old coming over to visit a 14-year-old?
I didn't really know she was 14.
She told you.
We were in a role-playing chat room.
Have you ever given or got head? Do you need a teacher? Are you sexy naked? Have you ever played with yourself? You gonna put my in your mouth?
And I like
Because I like that, I'll teach you.
And you're trying to say?
I'm trying to say it makes it look like you came here.
I didn't come here. I can't
to
pick her
have
up.
sex with an underage girl.
We were in a role-playing chat room, dude.
And what role were you playing exactly here?
Hansen's ears are going to be burning pretty soon, as for the second time in this video I'm going to place a bit of a focus on him. I opine that this is a prime example of how much Chris loves this job. David is a pretty big fish, and as we discussed earlier, there was a heavy clash of egos, and I think that it would feel rather satisfying for Chris to dominate someone like Schumacher. Other predators like Stacy would have just been frustrating for him. Griffith, Urban, and Alonso, they would have just been sad. Not a challenge at all, like throwing a dead mouse to a cat that is not hungry. Hansen isn't in it for the food, he's in it for the hunt. And personally, I can't blame him. He may have started this series with pure intentions, to take predators off the internet. Or maybe he started it with nothing but dollar signs in his eyes. Only Chris knows the answer to that one. Whatever it may be, I do have a question. Once novelties wear off, once money is no longer a pressing issue, and when fame becomes a standard baseline for one's life, something that doesn't excite like it used to, what remains? If I were to throw my opinion in the ring, what remains is something that we see very often in many walks of life. It is the person and their own personal sense of achievement. Successful athletes, artists, actors, business owners are just a few examples of this phenomenon. Once fame and wealth are achieved, what continues to drive a person to go beyond their limits is a very good question for many of us who watch on. There are people like Michael Jordan or Mike Tyson who are on the extreme end of the scale when it comes to the burn for passion and results. Yet, although they are extreme cases, all of us fall on this scale to some degree which they live on. I'm sure we've all felt the drive to achieve in some way or another, be it getting to the next level of a video game, to finish a painting, to beat a personal best in the swimming pool, hell, lose a set amount of weight. The list goes on, and to some degree or another, we've all been there. It's something that fame and wealth could never provide, the inner sense of accomplishment. I would argue that many successful athletes, artists, and business owners all have a strong connection to this drive to succeed as they begun their careers as passionate individuals, and it is this very passion that drove them to greatness. So once the fame and wealth that comes with being great is no longer a novelty, that passion doesn't dwindle so easily, and it often still burns strong. I know some people get lost to the fame and money, but many do not. This is how people push themselves beyond limits that many others cannot achieve. This is why the world has a handful of truly talented people. They are motivated by something else, something that cannot easily be put into words. I know what some of you are thinking. How could I ever compare Chris Hansen to one of those people who have achieved greatness? Well, to answer that, if you look at the journalism game, it's a tough business to crack, and this man rose to the top, becoming a household name. He started like all other journalists do, covering difficult stories, fighting the good fight, so to speak. He worked for years and years before this program aired and made a name for himself. He took a risk and proposed this idea to the executives, and they took it. It was sink or swim for him. He made a couple of risky decisions driven by his motivation to succeed, and here we have the result: To Catch a Predator from Dateline NBC. When we see Chris Hansen here, we see someone who managed to get on top of the mountain for his chosen field. And if you were to ask me, journalism is an art form. Much like everything, really. Woodchopping is an art form, economics, even cleaning. Every single thing in our existence can be pushed to the limit and become art in someone else's eyes. Great journalism to me is art. Interviewing and interrogation techniques are art. And with that being said, take away the controversial things Hansen has done. Take away the money the executives likely wanted rather than the predators off the street. Take it all away and look at the raw art of how these interviews are conducted. I think Hansen is good. He's really good. And I say that in the same way that I may say an athlete is good. I don't know if that athlete is a good person or not, but damn, they're good at their chosen sport. So with that being said, that leads me to this freeze frame. Hansen's interview with David here is a challenge for him. A clash that occurs within these two men's minds. David is a live mouse that has been thrown into Chris's den, and that mouse has spirit. Many of the other mice that stumbled into this space are docile. They're easy for him to push around and intimidate. But here, David hasn't buckled so easily, and Chris has had fun breaking him. So much fun, in fact, that he has gotten a little carried away. He sunk his claws in a little too far and bit a little too hard. He read too much of the chat log when he didn't need to, just to watch David squirm. To know, without doubt, that he has beat this man. The battle is in full swing, but it's already over, and he can't help but to smile at the satisfaction of that thought. It's these moments right here that I imagine Hansen could have become addicted to whilst doing these things, because these moments put his confrontational, interpersonal skills to the test.
People play roles, man. Anytime, never asked role playing. People just talk.
Watch porno.
And?
You got pornos.
I'm an adult.
Yes, but the girl you were talking to was not.
Well, I didn't know that, dude.
And your poor sister's waiting outside with 2 babies in the car?
Yeah. So
because you had to come over here and have sex with a 14-year-old?
I didn't come over here to have sex.
Why would you put that sister of yours?
I didn't come over here to have sex. I come over here to get the girl and go to the party. My God, dude. Is this some kind of hold up, man? You got a warrant? Because, I mean, if the girl don't want to come...
And here I thought that maybe David was hanging around because he's an imbecile. How wrong and right at the exact same time I was. He still thinks that there may actually be a girl who wants to come with him to a party. A 14-year-old girl that he can potentially molest. As he hasn't been arrested yet, he's probably pretty certain that Chris is a disgruntled father, and the sheer audacity of this man as he sits there and attempts to argue with this father in the hopes that the girl may still want to come. He's on a level, that's for sure. Willing to sit through such a god-awful, uncomfortable interaction in the hopes that he might yet be able to fondle a minor.
Man, you got a warrant? Because, I mean, if the girl don't want to come and if you got a problem...
What are you, defense lawyer now?
I'm saying, man, you don't got no cause to hold me. I got no problem sitting here to talk to you.
Who are you? I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story.
You do look kind of familiar.
Who try to meet kids on the internet.
Hey, man, I don't want to be on the news.
We are filming.
I don't want to be on the news, dog.
Well, it's a little late for that, dog. Now, if there's anything else you want to tell me.
All I gotta say is, ain't nothing going on here, dude. Nothing funny going on here.
Nothing funny going on.
No. If the girl's really 14, then I know, but...
She told you she was.
We were in the role-playing chat room, dude.
You know how many times I hear that?
No, I was in the role-playing chat room, dude. You got the phone records? Do you got that? Taped conversations? Do you have that?
You know, you're not really in that much of a strong position here.
I know that, man. Listen, am I being held up here?
You're not being held up. You're free to walk out that same door you walked in.
Do y'all want to interview? Hey, how y'all doing? Okay.
You can walk out that door anytime you want.
Am I gonna be on? Is the cops out there?
I can't speak to that.
How y'all doing? NBC?
NBC.
NBC. And you're Chris
Hansen.
All right,
Dateline
listen.
NBC.
Let me explain something to NBC for a second here. I don't know what kind of rap y'all got on people, but maybe y'all can get the whole story because this girl is in a role-playing chat room, and if she wants to play like she's 14, hey, whatever. But on the phone, the girl told me something different.
Really?
So, I mean...
And you expect me to believe that?
Yeah, you don't gotta believe it. You don't got to. I'm not trying to convince you, or these cameramen, or anybody else.
Who are you trying to convince?
Nobody, buddy.
Yourself?
Is the police out there? Let me know.
Again, I'm just doing a story.
Whose house is this? Can I smoke this shit
No,
right
you
now?
can't smoke this.
I don't think so.
You can smoke outside.
What a perfect storm for comedic material, hey?
Hey man, I don't want to be on the news. You feel me?
We are filming.
I don't want to be on the news, dog.
Well, it's a little late for that, dog.
Hansen worked very hard in this interview, and here is the reward, I suppose. Everything that happens from this point on, I'll try to break it down in a serious manner. But between you and I, just know, underneath it all, there's a child inside me having a really good chuckle.
Now, if there's anything else you want to tell me.
All I gotta say is, ain't nothing going on here, dude. Nothing funny going on here.
Nothing funny going on.
No. If the girl's really 14, then I ain't gonna, but...
I know I just said that I would try to be serious, but I'm having trouble with it. The voice crack at the word 14.
If the girl's really 14, then I ain't gonna, but...
The wobbling hat. The nothing funny going on here.
Nothing funny going on here.
Nothing funny going on.
No.
The fact that now he is more serious with his disguise than he has been for the entire interview. You really can't write these sort of things. It's brilliant.
But...
She told you she was 14.
We were in a role-playing chat room, dude.
You know how many times I hear that?
No, I was in a role-playing chat room, dude. You got the phone records? Do you got that? Taped conversations? Do you have that?
You know, you're not really in that much of a strong position here.
I know that, man. Listen.
I can't help myself. I gotta pick on one more thing. I quite enjoy the moment after Chris points out that he's not in a strong position. He tells Chris to listen, as though he's going to start negotiating his way into a better position. It's something a cartoon character would do when they're caught doing something wrong and then they try to talk their way out of it.
You know, you're not really in that much of a strong position here.
I know that, man. Listen. Am I being held up here?
You're not being held up. You're free to walk out that same door you walked in.
Do y'all want to interview? Hey, how y'all doing? Okay.
You can walk out that door anytime you want.
Am I gonna be on? Is the cops out there?
I can't speak to that.
How y'all doing? NBC?
NBC.
NBC. And you're Chris
Hansen.
On a more serious note, I did mention earlier about David's memory. This is where I wanted to bring it up again. Generally in situations of high pressure, a person's short-term observational memory will not be operating as well as it would when it's not under stress, as the mind strives to focus on information that only seems relevant to direct survival. Many people who are not accustomed to stressful situations such as this one would go into a panic, especially when confronted with the revelation that Chris Hansen is with the news program. I find it interesting to note that in this moment, David has correctly recalled Chris's name and that he is with NBC, something that I imagine many other people would have slip from their mind as they struggle to maintain some semblance of the control that is quickly slipping from them. David's ability to retain his wits whilst under pressure is not only noticeable with his memory, but also now as he has made the bold decision to reveal his face and defend himself to the world. Many other men we've seen at this point run out the door and scuttle into the arms of the police, but not David. He opts to hunker down and take a stand.
All right,
Dateline
listen.
NBC.
Let me explain something to NBC for a second here. I don't know what kind of rap y'all got on people, but maybe I'll just get the whole story because this girl is in a role-playing chat room, and if she wants to play like she's 14, hey, whatever. But on the phone, the girl told me something different.
A valiant but futile effort indeed.
Really?
So I mean,
and you expect me to believe that?
Yeah, you don't gotta believe it. You don't got to. I'm not trying to convince you or these cameramen or anybody else.
Who are you trying to convince?
Nobody. Man.
Yourself?
Is the police out there? Let me know.
Again, I'm just doing a story.
Whose house is this? Can I smoke this shit
No,
right
you
now?
can't smoke this.
I don't think so.
You can smoke outside.
Alright, dude. Whatever.
And that's David Schumacher, hey? For starters, as chuckle-inducing as his interview is, I think it's important to remember the danger of this man, and many others like him. As mentioned earlier in the video, he has a lot of things going for him that a rebellious young teen may find appealing. He's not illiterate, he has an ability to flow with language and dialogue, and he's not completely gross looking. Not everyone will look at this man and think, hey, what a stud. But he does have a level of vibrancy, quick wits, and physical presence that could turn a head or two that say, I like that. Because of this, David is dangerous to the youth. He sees no issue with grabbing a minor and parading her around in front of his friends who think that she's 17. He sees no issue with getting the minor intoxicated, and I opine that in that intoxicated state, if she freaked out, as he so eloquently put it, I doubt he would have any issue with being forceful to get what he wants. It's hard to determine whether this man is a preferential or situational offender. It could go either way. He might find younger girls easier targets to seduce, as they would be a little more susceptible to being enamored with his lifestyle rather than someone slightly older. Or maybe he really does just have a preference towards younger people, and this moment was just one in a long list of attempts that he has had to seduce someone. I wouldn't put it past him, because as you'll see coming up during his arrest, he makes the claim to police that he just likes to play like I'm young. A line that I find rather eyebrow-raising, as I think about how many other people he's chatted with who have identified as a minor, be it role-playing or not. For him to role-play that fantasy, it means that somewhere, deep in those sexual corners of his mind, that's what he likes. David, at this point in his life, is an egotistical, brash, loose cannon of a man. Someone who looks as though he could fly off the handle and throw self-preservation to the wind as he endures hardships to get what it is he desires. As we saw, he was willing to sit and get grilled by Hansen, all in the hope that the young girl he groomed may still come to the party with him. This man was on a collision course for a lifetime of battling the law long before getting caught in this sting. And after this sting, as you will see, he would go on to fulfill that destiny. Who knows what would or wouldn't have happened to him if he didn't get caught by Dateline. What I do think though, is that at the very least, he did do some good with his life by being here. He provided Dateline with one of the most entertaining predator catches that the program would ever see, and that would help prop this program up as a household name. At the very least, raising awareness to the issue of online sex predators at a time where the internet was a much wilder west than it is now. His antics are something that even people who aren't fans of the show can remember, especially some of the things he said during his arrest. Take a look.
Chill, dog. Hey, check me out, officer.
Hey, Christina, pick my cigarettes up right here.
Dude, this is a misunderstanding.
It's not a misunderstanding. You're going to jail.
I got 2 words for NBC. Role-playing chat room, all right, y'all? Because, man, the girl was role-playing. Hey, NBC, 2 words, role-playing chat room, dude. Because the girl was role-playing, man. Ask the girl what she said on the phone. No, I just like to play like I'm young. I'm not really. Y'all thought y'all was going to get some green and What's that for your pedophile thing? Yeah. Good, because when I get found not guilty, I'm sue somebody. Dude, this is a bum rap, man. Bum rap. Does it look like I need to get 14-year-old girls? I'm not guilty, man. Do I look like I need 14-year-old girls? I don't need 14-year-old girls, dude. I got all kind of girls.
I have mixed feelings about some of the men that get caught in these stings. As you may have been able to tell, I felt as though Jeff Stacey from my prior commentary video was no doubt an idiot, and could have no doubt caused harm to a young person. But with some direction or counseling, maybe he could have found himself in a position in life where he would have never offended. I could be completely wrong. I'm speculating on who he is as a person based on a few short minutes that we have to watch of his mannerisms, answers, and responses. But based on what we have to work with, that's what I feel. If Jeff had stumbled into a counselor's office rather than Hansen's more, then there's a chance he may not have offended, and subsequently would have been spared from a lifetime of ridicule and online shame. David here, on the other hand, I doubt any sort of counseling would help him. This man is a wild bull. He's going to do what he wants, when he wants, and no one is going to get in his way. Well, no one except Chris Hansen and a few cameras, hey? It's these moments with men like this that I think the TCAP program managed to stop some proper damage from being caused to young teens, both directly and indirectly.
Run into the car. Move.
At the time of filming, David was actually out on bail for other crimes related to robbery, witness intimidation, and I've even read some reports that he was being charged with sexual battery of a minor. The To Catch a Predator charges from this were dropped as he made a deal to plead guilty for the other charges that he was facing. And again, the reports of the sexual battery were pled down to assault. As a result of this, David was never placed on an RSO list. After serving 55 months in prison, he would continue on a path of trouble with the law. Drug possession, resisting arrest, and burglary are all just a few things that he was charged with in the years following. He was in and out of jail in many instances, all the way up until October 2020, where he got arrested for trespassing. Whilst out on bail for this and awaiting trial, he attempted to steal a vehicle at a gas station, which resulted in again him being arrested. At this point, he was now facing a longer prison sentence as a habitual offender, and he is visited in prison of April 2021 by Dr. Donald McMurray, a licensed psychologist. After Dr. McMurray's evaluation, he would find that David does not understand his charges, And furthermore, he has no understanding or appreciation of the legal system as a whole. The doctor would say this results in David not being able to manifest appropriate courtroom behavior, subsequently meaning that there would be no relevance to his testimony in court. The doctor also would say that David is unable to understand any rational or factional information pertaining to the legal proceedings, which renders him not competent to proceed. Based on these findings, the state deems David a danger to himself and others, that he suffers from psychosis and is not in touch with reality. They would also say that he is unable to live alone, with David refusing to acknowledge this reality and also refusing any psychotropic medications or mental health services. The state would turn his case over to the Department of Family and Children, who would then commit him involuntarily to a mental health treatment facility. And that's where he is right up until this moment now, in August of 2021. I believe that we can get a glimpse into the deterioration of his mental health in the videos that have emerged of him since his time on the Dateline program.
Today, we're gonna have a lesson on civics and what it means to have rights in America. Problem today is too many of you motherfuckers are ready to hand over your motherfucking rights.
Getting that good breakfast. Damn it, son. Is that good? Is that good?
Yo, this is for all them fucking haters out there, bro. My name is David Wesley Schumacher Jr., bitch. All you motherfuckers on the internet, you better get your facts straight, bro. Fact is, motherfuckers, Dateline, put words in my mouth.
I don't think that the backlash from his meeting with Hansen would have assisted with his mental health at all either. But what is certain is that David was on a path of chaos long before he stumbled into that house. Unfortunately for him, and based on everything that I've learned about him of recent years, I do feel as though there is much more chaos destined for this man's future.
Walked into my office on a stormy night, and my God, his slacks were tight. He looked at me and he said it all, cigarette packs.
Jeff Stacy was caught during the To Catch a Predator sting of Greenville, Ohio. He was 27 years old at the time and believed that he was talking to a 15-year-old female. Over the course of this video, I'll review Stacy's chat log, his interview with Chris Hansen, and the subsequent police interrogation that followed. I'd like you to keep in mind that the information that is available to us is just a small window into Jeff's life. A window that I will be using to speculate on what may have been going on with him at the time of this incident. The commentary that I provide on this situation is for entertainment purposes. It's a way for me to share my perspective on a criminal subject that has interested me for some time now. Be warned, the content of this video is verbally graphic. Viewer discretion is highly advised. Jeff starts out with a compliment, saying hello gorgeous. A troubling start indeed, but can be given a pass as he has not yet discovered her age. The decoy quickly asks him for his details, and Jeff lies, saying that he's 21. When he finds out that she is 15, it prompts him to ask if she likes older guys. This is generally where the grooming begins. But pay attention as Jeff skips a few gears and goes from first to fourth without warning. Jeff provides a picture to the decoy for her to evaluate his cuteness. And I would like to point out that he actually did not send a picture of himself. Instead, it is documented that he sent a picture of an attractive, well-built younger man. The decoy mentions that she thinks he's cute, and Jeff now abruptly turns up the heat, wanting to know if she'd like to get him naked. This is what I refer to in regards to his lack of grooming. Majority of predators will shower the girl in compliments at this stage, ask a lot of questions, and probe around for a while to see if sexual dialogue could be possible. Jeff does not do this. He launches straight into it, and one can only speculate why. A little back and forth leads Jeff to ask what she would do with him if she got him naked. Innocently and humorously enough, the decoy responds with, "Stare at you? I don't know. What would you want me to do?" And from this point on, Jeff is just a machine that spits out sexual question after sexual question. Would you ride or suck me? You a virgin? You going to sleep naked? And the completely unprovoked, do you swallow? The decoy gracefully chooses not to answer this last question, and the two soon say their goodnights. Jeff fires the conversation back up the next day at around 11 AM by asking how she is, and the decoy lets him know that she's bored home alone as her mother is out of town. Like a true gentleman, Jeff graciously makes the offer that she can alleviate her boredom by sucking on his penis. If you want to, I would let you. It's as though I'm witnessing two AI programs talking to each other. One bot designed to elicit sex, while the other is programmed to be agreeably distant to any incoming input. I don't have a car. I could always pick you up and we'll do it in the car. My house is empty till Sunday, so I could just come over. Yeah, if you want. What would we do if I come over? Well, that's what you said you wanted to do. What? You would suck me off? Yeah. Jeff seems to be pretty lost in his own little fantasy world, and the decoy recognizes this as well. She attempts to bring him back to reality by offering him some sort of chance to show that he is a human. Is your pussy tight? I think it is. Would you like me to eat you? Yeah. Hey, this is gonna sound stupid, but what's your name even? I didn't even ask you, laugh out loud. Jeff. What is yours? Sadie. Do you like to be eaten? Yeah. The decoy bringing light to the fact that they don't yet know each other's names should be a key moment. A moment where one would think Jeff would stop and look at the situation. That does not happen here. He does not drop a beat at all. He answers the question as quickly and bluntly as possible, then turns the conversation straight back to sex. It's as though the decoy's question was nothing but a small mosquito bite on the grand scheme of the body, which is his sexual plans. A little bump that drew his attention for a fleeting moment but quickly went away. As the conversation moves along, Jeff asks the decoy to answer the door naked. And be warned if you're reading along, this part of the chat gets pretty grisly. She says that she doesn't want to answer the door nude because it's cold and she might get sick. And instead they agree that she'll be naked in her room for when he arrives. She'll leave the door open for him to come in. Jeff clarifies that he will get straight to performing oral sex upon entrance, and quickly escalates this to filling a certain part of her body with a certain part of his. This is then followed by a bit more predatory chatter, and watch now as the fantasy for Jeff begins to shift to reality, as details of the potential meetup are discussed in a more solid manner. The decoy says that he can come over in about an hour's time, as she needs to take a shower, and Jeff would like her to remain naked after the shower. When she agrees to this, he actually decides that he would like her to take her clothes off right now. I really don't know what he's doing here. It seems to me that he is a total mess. He wants her to get naked now for the shower, and then he would like her to stay naked after the shower, even though that it's cold. He barely knows her name. He doesn't even have her address. It's really difficult to decipher what his brain is doing at this point. Usually there's a level of coherence to the predator's disgusting chats, but not with Jeff. He fires off whatever he's thinking in that moment, and there's zero filter. I find that reading this part of the log resembles the mind of a child. A young child who doesn't really know what they want, but they want everything. My 3-year-old nephew, for example, does things that resemble this behavior all the time. He will be tired and want to go to bed, but he'll also want to play with his toy trains. Then immediately he'll stop and he'll want to play with his toy cars. Then he'll get cranky that he's not in bed. It's the same thing here with Jeff. It's just unfortunate that that immature level of not realizing what one actually wants has transitioned to a sexually deviant place as Jeff has grown into a man. All he knows is that he wants sex, and it would seem that he's really never talked to a female about this stuff before. Like he's never got this far, no one's ever agreed to talk to him in this extent. And now that someone has, here he is, and he doesn't really know what to say. Answer the door naked. No, okay, be naked in your room. Okay, no, get naked now. Oh no, after your shower, get naked. I'll be there in an hour. Make sure you stay naked. What's your address? What's your name? He is a total mess. This chat is a glimpse into the mind of someone who is so lost inside the fantasy world of his sexually deviant imagination, yet has no idea what to do with it. Call me desensitized to these chats, but I infrequently cringe at what the predators say anymore. I've read enough of these now that it really has to touch a sensitive nerve to raise one of my eyebrows. That doesn't mean that I don't find the logs abhorrent. Quite the opposite. It's just that I enter them with a baseline of what sort of disgusting content that will be present. So most of the things these guys say now, it repulses me, that's for sure, but it doesn't shock me like it used to. So I do find it rather intriguing to read a log like this, where it has managed to raise one of my eyebrows. The reason being is that grooming for child abuse is a premeditated behavior. It is something that an individual will be aware of what they're doing whilst they're doing it to some degree. Be they a situational offender, someone who offends based on circumstance, or a preferential one, someone who seeks children. The behavior to lure their victim is always emotional. Some are far better at it than others, as we've seen over my videos. Clemente, for example, with his countless I love yous, would sit on one end of the spectrum, and Palumbo with a few compliments here and there on the other. And although their styles differ, they do all fall on the same scale somewhere. But Jeff does not. Jeff doesn't fall on any scale. He gives us nothing other than a bombardment of sexual questions. It has really thrown me and got me scratching my head. Is he a child predator? Is he a horny imbecile? Is he both? Does he lack personality, or is he hiding his personality? What is this man? Disgusting, no doubt about it, but what is the mechanism that drives him? He's hidden it well due to his sheer lack of personality on display. Or is there nothing to hide? It's impossible for me to tell, and these questions that I just posed cycle around and around my mind with each word that I read. He doesn't compliment her, he doesn't try to get to know her, or explain all of the nice things they can do together. He doesn't try to relate to her, he doesn't try to look interesting beyond presenting the false image of himself. He doesn't joke or laugh or promise. Hell, he doesn't even probe too much for information regarding who she lives with. Where's her father? Does she have siblings? His self-preservation function is as lacking as his conveyed personality. I'm gonna have to move on from this one, because this enigma presents more and more questions the more I ponder. As the two converse a little more, they verify that Jeff will be coming that night, but it will be later on around midnight. Jeff then shares another photo with her without her asking, and it's now a picture of his face. This time, the real image of his face. The decoy straight away alerts him that she's aware that he looks different from the photo he shared earlier. Jeff fumbles around with his words a little as he tries to explain why that may be, and the decoy intuitively soothes him by saying that he's still cute. After narrowly avoiding what could have been a potentially awkward end to this planned date, as it would be pretty reasonable to assume that having a lie such as this exposed would lead to distrust, and distrust would mean no meetup. Jeff gets his